I'm Amy Jordan, and this is
Yes, but why?
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 This is the Yes But Why podcast.
Hello, Yes But Why listeners. Welcome to episode 300 of the Yes But Why podcast. I thought episode 300 would be the perfect time to give you a little backstory and some fun clips. So this week on Yes But Why, it's a retrospective of the podcast's past. There have been a lot of changes to the podcast since the first episode of Yes But Why on April 18th, 2016. First thing to note is when the podcast started, it was me and two co-hosts, Delia Diaz and Wendell Smith.
Hi, I'm Amy.
I'm Delia.
And I'm Wendell, and welcome to
Yes, but
Why?
podcast. Yeah.
I went through lots and lots of episodes to find cool and weird moments to share. One thing that was really comforting was that I've maintained the purpose that Wendell and Delia and I came up with when we created Yes But Why. The podcast was started to explore different stories from the front lines of theater, different perspectives of living a life in the arts, and it still maintains that thematic thread today, representing the stories of creative people from all over the world. For the first few episodes of Yes But Why, it was just me and my co-hosts talking to each other about improv. We were all involved at the same theater, and we talked about our experiences, and also told a bunch of weird stories. Here's me bringing up my 18-year theory for the very first time in episode 1.
Because it's not like back in the day when we died at 45. We're
Right.
alive forever and ever. And so because of that, the journey of our lives is we get to be lots of different people, lots of different adventures. You can be in theater for a long period of time, then you can go become a CPA if you want to. Then you can go into real estate if you want to after that. The world that we live in allows you to be different people as many times as you want. And I think personally that the natural arc of the way people do that is in 18-year cycles. And that's where certain things, when people say I'm having a midlife crisis and you're you're not even old enough to have a midlife crisis. It's because they're in crisis in one of their cycles. The reason why I think that this is true is because the idea of the 18 years is ingrained in us from birth to adulthood, quote unquote adulthood. We're adults at 18. So every bit of our figuring out the world and learning and developing who we are develops from 0 to 18, right? So once you got to 18, you had an idea, a vague idea of what it is you wanted to do. Maybe you didn't know you wanted to do theater, but there's some inkling that led you to this thing. When I was 18, I knew I wanted to do this. I knew I wanted to do this. I knew I wanted to work in theater. I wrote down at 18, I would like to be running a theater somewhere in the world and be in charge of administration and doing this kind of stuff. I wanted the management. I wanted theater management. I wanted to run the place. I wanted to be part of that. Yeah. And 18 years after I had that dream, I had achieved it. When I was 36, I realized 18 years had passed again, and I had the dream that I wanted when I was 18. So I set about to come up with the next tier of a dream. I've achieved it. I've achieved it now. Great. That's awesome. But I refuse to plateau. Yeah, maybe I'll work here for a long time and do different things, but my job and my position and what I do to help the community and to help it ebbs and flows, it changes. It gets bigger, it gets smaller, it changes all the time, and I don't know what my next step is. I don't know if I should be focusing on my acting or my writing or my producing, but I get to do all of those things all the time so that I get to figure out where I'm at. But I don't worry too much about where I'm at right now because I'm right at the beginning of my third 18-year cycle. And so I'm trying to forgive myself the next couple of years to start again, to really put a lot of effort into one of those, or maybe even put effort into all of them and see which one pans out. Right?
Just dabble in real estate for a little bit. Who the hell knows?
Nah, screw that.
I've been thinking about real estate.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah?
Because you make good money doing it. You can move around.
Sure.
You can help people find a home. That thought process for me is like, oh, that actually sounds pretty interesting.
You watch a lot of HGTV?
No.
You should before you go to make that decision for your life.
I put as much thought into that as I did moving here.
But you're here now.
Good point.
Then we decided to ask others to join in on the fun. We finally landed interviews and, unsurprisingly, it was mostly people we knew. We were all comfortable with each other, so sometimes it got deep. Like in this clip in which Red Jefferson and Roy Lazarowitz tell us why they love writing and performing comedy.
We only have a little bit time left, so I wanted to ask.
Yeah, right. It just flies.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you guys, like, about your need to be in front of people. Like, what sort of, like, gets you to do the theater thing? Like, what makes you continue to come back to it? What's your need that is fulfilled by it? That's a deep question.
Shit.
Oh, you guys weren't ready for that. Okay, what's your least favorite wrestler? No, seriously. Yeah, like, I mean, that's sort of what we talked about before we actually, made the move to have guests, was like, just kind of, what's your motivation? Like, like deep down, what makes you want to perform?
I live by a code of better stressed than depressed. Whenever I'm the slowest, I become the most depressed. When I'm not doing things, I become the most depressed. I have to do things, otherwise I lose my mind. I can't keep I think my brain is a little bit, it acts weird. It's, I just like being active in period. And being on stage gives me that adrenaline boost. And I like that. I like that a lot. Mm-hmm. It's a free drug that's not bad for you. Yeah. And that's what I consider the stage. It's something that, like, I'm nervous about. Climax on stage, falling action.
I do like that you climax on stage every time you go on stage.
Oh yeah, I dig it.
No, I mean, it's hell for the intern. But it is fun to see.
That's why when you get off stage, you're kind of fuzzy. Like when you get off stage and you're just like, I'm not really sure what happened. Yeah. Like the best sex you've ever had in your life, you finish and then you're like,
how'd that go?
What just happened? Did we? Oh, all right, yeah.
All right, how do I lift my right arm? Nope. Okay, it's fine. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, there's a fuzziness to that, like, hot climax.
It's true, though. It's like, there's something strange about it. It's not like, it's the closest thing to coming to an orgasm without it being romantic.
But it can be romantic sometimes.
Not even romantic, but like it.
I was gonna say, because like that is not the only context. Well, that'd be. I love that.
It's just like
you've only had romantic orgasms.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing.
It's like Top Gun every time. That's amazing.
Oh my god.
Me being on stage is what my orgasm is. Imagine if I'm like that, but romantic on stage. That's frightening.
It's like an orgasm, except you don't love that person 100% with your heart and soul. But
that's intense.
Yeah. Oh my god! Even if that's not true, let's just keep.
I'm not going to talk about it ever again.
That's what it is from now on. Like, I mean, that's your character.
That's what I love about Red is his heart. So like, I was like, that's amazing. You've only had sex with people you love. That's the best thing.
His heart.
You're picked on by him.
His heart is what orgasms.
No, I just respect that because I'm a monster.
Oh my god.
What about you, Roy? What gets you into the thing?
Oh. Boy.
What makes you orgasm on stage?
What makes me orgasm on stage? See, it's tough. It's tough because it's really easy to kind of sit here and say, like, it's this kind of, I've always been creative, right? You know, we've always done that creative stuff. And even though I had two older brothers, I spent a lot of time by myself. Because when I was 10, Mike was 15. And when you're 15, you don't want to be with your 10-year-old brother, right?
Yeah.
So from like ages 9 to like 14 or so, I spent a lot of time just making shit up by myself and putting myself as the main character of all of it. And I would rewrite movies. That's when I got into writing. I actually had this moment last week. I saw Reservoir Dogs on the big screen. And it was the first movie I'd ever seen that was like R-rated. And then I immediately rewrote it. And I was like, look at the script that I wrote. So it was all about that, but what got me into like
hubris.
Yeah, that was good, but
yeah, I think I can
let me fix Reservoir Dogs real quick.
Well,
not your famous scripts.
According to
way more
some, I fixed it pretty good. My 7th grade history teacher loved it.
Oh my god!
Trying to think of Roy puns, but I couldn't think of it.
That was good.
I didn't even think of it.
Did you had one?
I had one on the cusp, but I was just like, that's not a movie. And I was about to say Roy Story.
Roy Story, but that's not like I rewrote Toy Story too. It was called Roy Story. Toy Story is a great film.
Have Rat Dad be Woody.
Oh, Rat Dad's so good.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
What gets me to perform? I think it's tough. It's just having a good time. You know, that's the thing. That's like, I was afraid. I had really bad stage fright a majority of my childhood, and then I did a Me Museum. It was called Me Museum. It was you brought in things that were important to you in 7th grade history class. Changed my life. And I had this clay thing that I made of my address, and it broke in my backpack, and I cried like a motherfucker, let me tell you. And after that, my stage fright was just kind of over. I don't know what happened. And since then I was in bands and stuff, which I enjoyed, but I feel like doing theater stuff, you take ownership over what you're doing a lot more. You can't just scream. You need to actually take ownership of what you're doing. And there's a communal aspect to it, especially what we're doing now, like what we all do, that I love so much. Solo stuff just seems scary, but like performing with a group is super fun and super great. And that's one of the things doing Knockout that I love so much is I get to do it with you, which I really enjoy.
Dude, yeah.
We also talked about teachers and how they affect their students with their notes. Listen first to this story from Jisoo Peck about how he approaches giving notes to his improv students. And then the clip after that is Chui Zarate talking about how he took a particularly harsh note from his directing teacher in college.
I was going to, a few minutes back, I was going to ask you, because you guys teach stuff, so I was just curious as to whenever you're teaching it, because you just mentioned like questions, do you let somebody get a full question out to see where their brain, how their brain is processing the information that you're providing them? Because that kind of just kicked into me to realize like how important listening to the full question is before you start answering it.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. I do listen to the full question. It is one of those things where, honestly, sometimes I do let my, like, perception of the person kind of play into that. Like, if I know that person talks a lot, but like they usually drop their question right at a certain point of the conversation, like I'm just looking for that, to be honest.
Okay.
Right. But, you know, most of the time I'll kind of humor people and just, you know, chat with them for a long time. But personally, I'm very kind of laconic.
I don't know what that
if I was
means.
just short worded, you know. I'm very brief, terse, things like that. There you go.
I tend to let people ramble. I mean, there have been people that we've both taught that I can like think of right now who are the kind of people who you have to be like, okay, let me stop you right there, and like get them to where they need to be, because whatever their question is, it clearly doesn't have anything to do with what they really need to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, not everybody's like in it in the same way. You know what I mean? So sometimes you're answering different kinds of questions.
Yeah. So for example, like when it comes to teaching, a lot of people are either in it because they've never done improv before and all of a sudden they love doing it, but they don't know why they're doing it. They just want to finish it, right? You got those types. You have the types who are actors who want to use it to hone their acting skills. You have people who are improv lifers who just love improv and want to do it for the rest of their lives. You have people who do it because their wife or husband does it, you know, or best friends, whatever. You have all sorts of different sorts of people looking to do improv for different reasons. So once you key in on why they're doing the improv or why they're continuing on in levels, it's very easy to be like, oh, you care about it much more and stuff like that. Not to say that there are people who just don't care about it, but you can tell who cares more and stuff.
So, do you find it beneficial to ask that question immediately?
I asked that question first day of class.
Yeah, I think I remember you asking that, like, why we got into it or something like that.
Like, why you're continuing on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because obviously you got into it, and you found that out in level 1, but in level 2, it's like, well, now you're moving up, so obviously you feel something about improv, so I want to know why, and stuff like that. And we can focus on that kind of thing a little more clearly once I have, like, a kind of understanding of your improv and stuff.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of that, of your improv.
Yeah, everyone's got a different style.
I'm a big proponent of that. That there's not just one way to do it. We all have our own way of doing it.
Right. I like to tell people that I can teach you how to do a brush stroke, but what picture you paint is up to you, right? It's just a line until you make it what you want to make it, right?
I like that.
That is great.
I think I got some great advice from some teachers there. Some that sounds like dream killing, but really just reality that helped me. Like, I had a directing teacher who took me aside once, and he was just like, Chewy, you're a fantastic actor. You're really good at it. You're gonna be great one day. The problem is you are not gonna get cast until you're about 40. He said you have an old soul, and it shows in your acting, and your body and your face do not match what you can do at this point, like, or what you're doing. And I was like, okay, well, that's cool. He said, however, you're a really good director too, and maybe you should focus on that for a while. And I listened to him, and I did, and I love directing. I think I like directing written plays more than anything in the world. I came into doing improv. Well, I've been doing improv forever, but essentially I do improv as a selfish thing to feed my acting bug, because I'm kind of hard to direct as a director. I'm very, very like, okay, whatever. I'll do that, even though I don't think that's the intention of the playwright, that kind of thing. And then I get into these things like where I'm like, and I try not to, and I know it's a bad thing. I know I'm bad at it. And so I take myself out of written theater, like out of scripted theater, and I do improv, because that's on me. If I fuck up on stage with you, I did it. Or I need to find a way to fix what happened with you, and we need to make it right for the audience.
Sure.
It's about entertainment for me.
Yeah.
And I feed my acting bug by doing that. And I have nobody to blame but myself if it fucks up.
You're so like cognizant of this thing that like the controlling aspect, and to be honest, you saying it, like, I kind of realized that might be why I do it too. Because when I direct, I'm like I'm like in charge of everything and like control the whole situation. And then when I act, I want it to be more free. So even though I direct sketch, I don't love to act in sketch, because then it's more, I like to go into improv, and then it's like I'm free and easy, and my one job is to stop being the asshole I usually am, and to just
fuck around,
love everyone, and give them the fun time they want to have.
There was also a lot of random crap that we tried because we weren't sure how to do interviews yet. Like when Wendell bought that book of 1,000 questions, and we ended up having this discussion on trust with Lisa Friedrich.
So I found this list of questions, and it's funny because there are like 10 different categories. So just guess a number, just say a number between 1 and 1001, and I'll tell you what category it falls under, and you can agree to that question or not. Because some of them I wouldn't even agree to.
What? Can you go over the categories?
666.
I'm sorry, you wouldn't agree to them?
These
questions are like, do you want to have sex with your dad? Like, these are the questions Wendell asks.
Hey, I like asking like sleepover questions.
One of my biggest fears.
I
don't know that, dude.
No.
So,
no.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know your actual... no.
I don't know either one of my parents. And they're from Texas. So there's like a pretty decent chance that I've hooked up with a cousin on accident and would never know it.
Cousins, fuck them.
Right.
You can't.
I'm from South Carolina, I can attest to that.
Right. Okay.
666
Too real.
is hard-hitting, deep and challenging questions. That's like the category that falls under.
Oh, God.
So that's exactly why I was like, I could just say what category that
Do you want to read the question, though?
Sure, sure.
And then, because if it's like...
There's like 100 questions per category.
Okay,
Ooh,
so I'll
boy.
stay out of the 6s.
I was like, go to like a 4 or a 5. They're lighter. They're
I just
like
want to see what 666 is.
getting to know you.
What if 666 is like, have you currently or ever been possessed?
Would you know?
To what extent do you trust people?
Oh, good one.
Actually,
That's not that bad.
Yeah. I know.
All right.
This book is it oversells itself in certain points.
Huh. To what extent do I trust people? I think I'm over trusting at first, and then I get burned, and then I just like am weird about it for a minute, and then I can go back to trusting a lot of people.
Okay, so when you get burned, it's like the trust goes away all around.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Like I'm like close it down.
Yeah.
Close it down. And there's very few people that I can close down like in with me.
Okay.
But then whenever I'm back up, I'm like, I guess there's like layers, right? Like it depends on what the thing is. Like that's kind of a vague question, but like trust to like, you know, in different situations, there's a different group of people. I think.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of a case to case thing. Like you wouldn't trust Jen guy as much as like just your standard like festival goer or something.
Yeah.
You know.
I have a hard time trusting, but only just because I was burned a bunch of times by very close friends, like in short order in my 20s, and now I mostly just keep everyone at arm's length.
Yeah.
Like you guys are all real nice, but I mean, like I've probably said more in the podcast than I ever said in real life. I'm wondering if I need to like reveal more about myself. I like yelled at my husband for writing something nice on Facebook because it was too revealing about me, and I was like, I'm a private person, and I was like, wow, I didn't realize that. So
that's
the idea of trust, I think, has to do sometimes with letting people in.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like do I trust people? Do I trust that right now the theater's functional? Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Do I trust that like this machinery is functional? Yeah. But like, do I trust that none of you are gonna murder me right now? Yeah, totally. But like,
guys,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Larger sense.
Finally, we're there. Yeah.
Man, what a long con.
Yeah. Since day one, I've been trying to get under your skin.
I was like, and you like just got Delia, like she just got her. You were like, get in the theater. We need to make this happen. She's like, listen, I'm doing stuff. I'm in this relationship. I can't come to the theater yet.
Oh wait, it blew up. I'm there. I'll go.
Oh well, or you blew something up. I'm gonna get out of Dallas, man.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden
she's been slowly moving closer to you without telling you.
Right?
And like she's been keeping
right? I swear you lived in Georgetown. I swear. And now all of a sudden you're like, I live in the apartment complex next to yours.
It's like the window overlooking your apartment. Just stand and eat my cereal while you guys have dinner.
Don't worry. My husband is more neurotic and distrustful than I am, so no windows can be seen through into our home. But, yeah.
Are you, do you consider yourself a trusting person, Valerie? I'm gonna say no, probably.
Well, because I really identified.
What if you just threw up right now? Okay, next question.
yeah, sorry. Let me get on the 6s.
There's even that one weird episode when I posted a spoof radio show that I had made for my sketch show, The Neighborhood. I only did it the one time. I guess I just wanted to get more ears to listen to it. I was very proud of it. Episode 12, if you want to check it out.
There is no such thing as an accident. It is just fate renamed. Napoleon Bonaparte. What seems to us merest accident springs from the deepest source of destiny. Friedrich Schiller. Oops, I Did It Again. Britney Spears. Some of the greatest minds to ever live have claimed that accidents cannot happen. Every outcome is fate, or destiny, or purpose. Whether it be dropping your iPhone on that one pressure point that cracks the whole screen, or maybe it's soiling yourself in public after eating too many sugar-free gummy bears. Every action has meaning, consequence.
Don't trust the man from France who floats on a sea of milk. He'll look you in the eye, but everything he says is a lie.
From the neighborhood sketch comedy show, this is Cereal, a story about breakfast in 5 parts. I am Amy Jordan.
Then, very early in our growth, we had the opportunity to talk to Kevin McDonald of Kids in the Hall. He had taught a sketch workshop at the theater, and I took his class, and we bonded and became friends. We still talk on the phone occasionally. We had a great talk, and he helped us hone our interviewing skills.
So you say that you're a shy person. How did, as a shy person, you get into theater at first?
There we go. Now we get started. Good question.
There it is.
Because I really only have, I'm not being modest, I really only have one talent. I couldn't do anything else. I was average at school. When I applied, I was okay, but I didn't apply myself a lot. I couldn't be a carpenter. I couldn't be a doctor. My father wanted me to be a lawyer because his father was a famous lawyer in Montreal, but I knew I wouldn't be able to do that. But when you have the sort of comedy talent, you know it right away because people laugh. You make people make noises, so it's kind of obvious. And I was making people make noises a lot, and I realized pretty early on that was my bent because I started thinking things about it. At 12, I started realizing that I'm not funny telling jokes. I can't think of jokes, but I'm funny in how I pause and talk. And that's called comedy timing. And then and then my big story when I realized that it was in grade 5 or 6, and we had in our English class we had to we had to write a story and do it in front of the class. And I wrote a funny story about my vacation in the Bahamas where I got a sunburn and got shingles. Oh. It happens to me a lot. I have a sunburn right now, microphone. It got gigantic laughs, and the class sort of loved me for like a couple of days. But I didn't care about that. And a few months later, the English teacher gave us another to write something else. And this was before I was 12, so I thought, all right, I wrote my comedy. Now I'll write my Alfred Hitchcock thriller because I was a movie book. I wrote this thriller about a husband trying to kill a woman, and there's a car chase and stuff like that. And I was really excited. And then the day of the class, I was excited to read it. And then when it was my turn, as I started walking to the head of the class, all the kids were going, "It's Kevin. It's gonna be really funny. Oh my God, Kevin, it's gonna be really funny." And I started like feeling so bad. I have this thing about disappointing people.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I went to the front of the class. And I pretended to read from it, and I made up a story. It was based on a true story about my football. I was a football player because I was in a house league. And my dad ran the team so anyone could play, and I got hurt in the huddle. I broke a rib in the huddle. So I just started telling that, and they got Greer laughing. And I remember leaving that day to walking home from school, resigned to the fact that I guess it's comedy I'm doing.
Yeah. Resigned.
Yeah.
Did you ever get a chance to read your Alfred Hitchcock thriller?
You know what? I still had it till I was. Oh, no, I never.
No.
Never. That's sad, isn't it? I had it for a minute. I had it till I was like in my early 20s, and I moved from a place to a place, and I lost it.
Oh, I was like, give it to me, we'll make it.
Yeah.
After getting to interview Kevin McDonald, we were empowered to start reaching out to visiting comedians when they came in town for tours and festivals. Check out this clip from Austin Film Festival with filmmaker Par Parekh on accepting yourself as an artist.
I wrote and produced a short film with Ben Zeitlin called Glory at Sea, which was in 2008, and that was maybe 10 years ago. We made the music video together, and we premiered at South by Southwest, and that was a lovely experience. And then I kind of went back into my kind of bizarre career path of just doing
biology?
No. Doing, I didn't go back to bio, thank God. But
okay.
I was just doing, fashion commercials and these documentaries, and
Oh,
editing
right.
these things. I kind of went that route, and then I
bet you there's pretty good money. I mean,
it was money. Yeah, there was.
money.
It was a nice living. It was
Yeah.
a very nice living. And then at a certain point, I was helping my friends. I like helping my friends make their things. And then
It's hard to separate from that. You know, when you get to make money, I was a stage manager for a lot of years because I just was like, but I get to do theater and get a paycheck. And then when I almost got to a level where it was like, if you take this next job, you're a stage manager for the rest of your life. I was like, no, thank you. I can't do this. And they're like, what? Huge opportunity. And I was like, I know, but I don't want to be that.
It's
like,
such a
and you
real
have to
conundrum.
make this decision. Yeah.
Well, now, I have this other weird aspect to it where I didn't use the A word until maybe 4 years ago. Artist.
Yeah.
Which it took some therapy and some figuring out because my culture, I'm Gujarati, which is a state in northwest India. Okay. I was born in Texas, believe it or not. I mean, and when you see the short, you'll hear a wonderful song that explains that. But our culture, Gujarati culture, is not super supportive of the arts. You know, we're very business minded. We're very, as I learned over the course of time, our culture did not give us an opportunity to see what an artist was, because that's just a hobby.
Sure.
And so I would call myself a filmmaker or film editor or something like that, but never an artist. And thankfully I had supportive parents, who were saying, you can just follow your dream, you can do that.
Yay, parents.
Yep. And I embrace that term where I go, you know what? I feel like I'm not this gun for hire thing. I have these ideas. My friends say I have all these ideas that need to be expressed out in the world. I wish there was something that I could be like that. And my shrink was like, yeah, it's called an artist. I'm like, no, I'm not an artist. An artist is like a person who devotes their life to this. Like, you're an artist and maybe that's what you should do. And I go, oh, okay. And of course, I just leaned into that, listened to the advice of all my friends.
Yeah.
And I got back from the Himalayas from the shoot, and I endured a lifetime of cold up there. Got back to a New York winter and just packed my car up, drove out to LA.
Wow.
In this clip, touring stand-up comedian Josh Gondelman tells us what it was like for him submitting writing packets to late-night comedy shows.
I started doing all of that stuff, tutoring, freelance writing, and then stand-up and kind of trying to break into the New York scene little by little. And so I was there for about a year and a half, and then my friend Jack and I founded this Twitter account that went super viral, super fast. This modern Seinfeld, which is at Seinfeld today, which is just Seinfeld plots with contemporary technology. It's like the idea is really simple. And so that kind of took off really quickly. And then people started asking us to write things, to like submit places. So that was the end of 2012. And then in 2013, I was submitting to TV shows. I had signed with a manager that was helping me. Before that, I'd done a few. Like, I would have a friend work for a show. I had a friend who's a writer for the Tonight. It was Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, and I got the opportunity to submit as a monologue joke writer. And then I had a friend who I'd met at another festival who was a manager and was like, "Oh, why don't you submit this to Chelsea Lately? Like, write a packet for that." So I spent 2013. I was still tutoring. I was still freelance writing. I was still on the road, but then I was doing these packets for late night shows. So they ask you for a specific set of things that would appear on the show, or like in the style of things that would appear on the show. They don't put them on the show, and in a specific period of time. And so I did probably 20 of those in 2013. And in the middle of the year, I got hired to do like a little bit of work for Billy on the Street, which was really fun and cool. I got called in for a meeting for that and met with Billy, who was super nice, and then submitted like a little freelance stuff for them. And that was cool. And that kind of like bolstered me through the rest of the year to be like, okay, I think maybe I'm close. Like maybe I'm not out to sea on this. And then the last packet I wrote in 2013, I did one more in 2014. But the last one I wrote in 2013 was for Last Week Tonight, which was not a show at the time. It was like about to be a show. So I did that. And then I got asked to write a second follow-up in like a tighter time frame. And I did that. And they brought me in and I got hired for this web. I submitted as a writer for the show, but they knew that I had this social media experience and that I'd written for the internet and was kind of like conscious of what happens online. And so I got hired for this kind of comedy writing for the internet job at the show, and then have since moved over to write for the show itself. So that's
so great.
Thank you. That's like a very long-winded version of that trajectory. And there's a lot of like failing in there, and like a lot of, just a lot of like garbage gigs, and a lot of like writing stuff that went nowhere, and book proposals that went nowhere before my friend Joe Berkowitz and I sold a book, and that came out last year. And so like, it's like a lot of, I feel like compressing the story still is long-winded, but doesn't do justice to like how much shit shoveling gets done in comedy.
Next up is a moment from Austin Film Festival when I sat down with writer-director Zoe Ward to hear about how much she loves the collaborative aspects of filmmaking.
What had been holding me up as a writer was the fact that I really loved the iterative process of filmmaking. I loved that you wrote something down and it had to change because you had to film it, and you couldn't film it in exactly the way that you wrote it. And then once you filmed it, you couldn't keep it. It was not going to be the same thing that you wrote, and then the thing that you filmed had to be edited, and so you had a chance to tell the story again through editing. And to me, the opportunity that filmmaking affords you of just not having to box something up and put it away right away. It was like, oh, this is what I should be doing. This is what people have been telling me when they say I'm a critic and not a writer. It's that I don't look at a creative project and say that's the best it's going to be, goodbye, the end, moving on to the next thing. I want to see it grow. I want to see it get better, and I also want collaboration. I don't think an artistic product, there are geniuses out there who just take a lump of clay and form it into a brilliant work of art. Most of us need other people. We need feedback. We need the world to inform what we're doing. And filmmaking is this really unique form where every step of the way, you have to ask people for help. And you have to allow them to put their own mark on it, I consider myself a screenwriter. I went to school to be a director. What I love about directing is that I have this grand vision for a product I want to make, a creative vision, and I physically can't accomplish it without other people. So I have to find someone that I really trust to translate what I'm saying about the visuals of the film into the visuals of the film. I need my DP, I need my production designer, I need my actors to be able to hear what I'm saying, which means I always have to be clarifying my own ideas and figuring out the best way to communicate them. And it also means I have to let go. That it's just I've explained it the best I can, you're interpreting it in a way that I was not expecting, and that's either an amazing thing or an awful thing, but it's just it is what it is, This is what the world is, how it's kind of hitting onto this product that I thought was a done deal, but it's not. It's not.
I really love this idea that the fact that things change and that each new process that becomes something different, but it's all still the same thing. It's like people. It's like us. You know what I mean? We become different people with each new journey that we go on, with each new adventure. And I love it too. A lot of people, we want to be, especially writers, we want to be alone in a room. Don't talk to me, what's going on? Heck, I came in this room, I was like, there's so many people in here. It's just the openness you have to the collaboration and to the other people, that's so great. And then allowing them to make the changes and just deal with it. Because that's life. How many times have you gone out in the morning with a plan and then life just makes it different? And by the end, you're like, well, I got 20% of that done, but I think I handled it.
Listen in to this clip of my conversation with Dan O'Connor and Edie Patterson when they came in town for Out of Bounds in 2018.
Class was upstairs, someplace on 6th Street.
Yeah.
It was up in some empty restaurant or something.
In my memory, it was the upstairs at the Hideout, but that's not right.
It's not. I taught in the Hideout when they were still gutting it from when it was the jewelry store.
Right. Yeah.
During not before Out of Bounds, it was Big Stinkin' Improv.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
Festival.
when I was first doing stuff, with those guys, Mike Delonzo and Shayna and all those guys, Craig. That was like one of the first big stinkins. Or second, or how many were there altogether? 2 or 3?
2 or 3. I can't remember.
It might have been the second one, but because I can remember, like, I had just started being friends with Mike Delonzo because we were doing improv together, and I called him and I was like, "Want to go around to some of this stuff at this festival together?" And like that sealed our friendship, and we were major pals from then on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had started with Bay Area theater sports a long time ago and been part of that. And then I moved to LA and helped start Los Angeles theater sports, which has since become improv theater over the years. We went from an improv group short form thing into doing full length improvised plays. Which
now that's all we do is full length plays, improvised. Yeah.
But I had done a workshop with Keith Johnstone in San Francisco, and Sean Hill was part of it. And actually, Ed Carter, who did the Big Stinkin' Festivals, was also part of it. So Sean was like, "I'm thinking about starting this in Austin. You should come down and teach." And Brian Lohman and I came down and taught, and that's where I first met Edie. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I literally taught in the hideout downstairs in what is now the coffee shop.
Right.
And there were boards on the ground and dust, and they hadn't done anything yet. It had just been gutted from being the jewelry store for all those years.
We did a couple of shows while you guys were there too.
Yeah, we did shows at the State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And a maestro somewhere else.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
So
how many years had you been teaching when you came here to teach that workshop?
I've been teaching for 10 years at that point. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got into improv, you got into theater sports in the Bay Area, and then you were like, "This is it. I love it."
Yeah, and
Signed, sealed, delivered.
I got to be sort of Johnny Appleseed. I helped Ventura Theater Sports. I helped San Diego Theater Sports, Palm Springs Theater Sports, Austin. I had gone to drama school in England, and I'd come back to San Francisco, and all the roles that I could get in professional theater, it seemed like, were being taken by MFA students at ACT, which is the big rep house in San Francisco.
Right.
And so I was not getting any work. I was getting some commercial work and things like that. And a woman who was directing me in a play said, "Well, they're doing this thing, theater sports. This woman from Seattle is coming down, Rebecca Stockley, who's basically the godmother of West Coast theater sports." And I took the class and was hooked immediately. It was 2 weekend workshops, and we did a show on the Monday following the second weekend and sold it out because there was all these people in San Francisco, professional improvisers who were 10, 15, 20 years older than me, or professional comics and actors who suddenly were like, "Oh, this is what we should all be doing. This is fun. This is not bar prov." And so it was an immediate hit. And I kind of felt like, oh, I found what I should be doing, and never looked back.
Mm-hmm.
And
same here. I just never stopped doing it.
Yeah.
It just was always exactly the right thing.
And it's led to so much. Your question before we started recording about where stuff has led you and how have you used improv? I have a book coming out next month.
Yeah, you do.
Next month.
God.
Well, I'm so excited.
I'm just laughing at your pointer finger.
Yeah.
I love it.
Called Life Unscripted, that I wrote with an old theater sports student of mine who's a psychiatrist. Psychologist. And he had been using stuff that I taught him way back in the day with guys at the VA who suffered from PTSD, and we've been talking about it for years. Anyway, so we've taken a lot of narrative improv and put it into a book about basically a self-help book about how to use improv as a life tool. So that's a huge, gigantic arc from doing theater sports with Rebecca Stockley in San Francisco, and all these points during my life, improv has spurred me on to the next thing, including meeting and marrying my wife.
Your voice got weird.
It was love. It was love. It was love tone. It was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did bring you all sorts of wonderful things.
Yeah.
That's so great. And what an interesting thing that you found a way to turn it into ways to help other people. I mean, I feel like improv for sure is one of those things that like is so therapeutic, can help people just learn how to speak to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every corporate workshop I've ever taught, you know, it's like, I don't realize that people exist in the world that aren't creative because that's all I hang out with.
Yeah.
And then I meet these people in a room, like 40 people, and I'm all like, oh, you haven't done something creative in years, have you?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we're going to have a good time. And then they finally shake off all of the weird adulthood and they're like, oh, I can have a nice time. And I'm like, enjoy the rest of your event or whatever. Cause I'm usually like the kickoff of some sort of like, you know, group team building thing. And,
Yeah.
Totally. It's crazy when we do things like that, like you're talking about, and like just in general, I don't know, in classes and in improv in general, I think I've been thinking about this a lot the last year and a half or 2 years. I think we don't talk enough about, the sort of root thing of getting rid of the fear when you start, because I think it's so prevalent, even in people who've been doing it forever. There's this weird fear of like, not even weird, it's just human. But the reason they're all afraid in a corporate thing is because they don't want to be embarrassed or they think they're going to look dumb. And I think we don't talk enough about what happens if the worst thing happens.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
Yeah.
You're not going to die in here.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so maybe you say something, everyone thinks you're stupid. The next second they won't. P.S. They're never going to think that because everyone's only thinking about themselves.
Right.
And like, yeah, but it's so interesting that we have to fight through that thing as like full grown adults.
One of the things in the book, there's a moment, I think Jeff came up with this actually, I'm going to give him credit for it, but where when people feel embarrassed, like getting somebody's name right, wrong, if I get somebody's name wrong and that sort of panic of, I know this person forever and I got their name wrong. And in the book, Jeff wrote, the first thing to ask yourself is anyone dead? You know, the idea that it's, you made a mistake. It's fine. You know, move on. And, you know, the terrific thing, improv t-shirt, mistakes are gifts, mistakes are an opportunity, you know, learn from them, as opposed to that fear. But you said something great, which I've started talking about in classes in the last couple of years, which is that the fear is there and we're not working to remove the fear. We're using the fear. It's fine. It's good. It's good to have fear and acknowledge it and be okay with it.
I think two things. I think if you can get to a whiteboard place of like totally wiping the whiteboard and telling your brain like, oh, thanks so much, but not now. For me, a big, like the sweet spot mindset for almost all of life is fuck it. In a really fun way. There's nothing negative in this fuck it. Of just like, we don't know how this is going to end up. Let's see what happens. I think that works for everything in life. And when you're in a true fuck it, there's absolute fearlessness. So I'm for that. And I'm also for bravery, which is what you're saying of like, okay, I'm scared to death and I'm gonna just, there's nothing to do but walk through this fire in front of me. So I'm just gonna walk through it. That's almost like like it forces fearlessness through bravery. It's something slightly different than what you were saying though.
Okay.
What were you saying?
I was just saying that you maybe not make.
Oh, you were saying work with the fear and like have it and know you're having it.
Yeah. Acknowledge it as opposed to trying to push it down, which I think sometimes causes people anxiety because they try and press the fear down or remove the fear as opposed to going, I have some anxiety around this or I have some fear around this and continue to move forward.
Totally. Because I think sometimes just acknowledging it can make it go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's all different ways to try to make it go away. Yeah.
It's like anxiety. I mean, one of the things when you fight anxiety, you make it worse as opposed to acknowledging, oh, I'm anxious about this. And just that sort of I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
mindfulness about it.
I weirdly that show, I'm doing 3 shows while I'm here, but the one I'm doing tomorrow night by myself, always like I have to fight my brain for days and days leading up to it. And yeah, I see that guy flying around. It's okay.
I was like, that's what I'm embarrassed about right now.
No, please don't be. But I've even found sometimes if I can just go like, there's no controlling this. I don't know if this is going to be good or not. Yeah, people paid, but the only way that for me it's going to be good is if I can get to a place of not controlling it at all. Mm-hmm. And just knowing like, opening up enough to know like, well, some river is going to be existing out there and I just need to jump in it. I cannot plan anything right now that will make it good. I can't try to be good. That's the only thing that will make it good to me. And sometimes the only way I can get to that is before that show to go, you don't know when you're going to die. You could die tonight. So just have fun. Like I have to get that extreme sometimes and go like, we don't have control of any of this. Just let it rip tonight. Yeah.
But I can get a little extreme that way. Yeah. It makes a little bit, it's like, don't worry about it. There are so many other crazier things that could happen. Right. Sometimes just thinking of all the crazy things that could, like,
it's helpful.
Not that could happen in the, like, I'm in a stage, I'm pretty safe.
Right.
It's like things that aren't going to happen. Like, it's not going to burn down. Right. This thing isn't going to happen. Like, all sorts of things where it's like, it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
Like,
no matter what.
These people are nice. Yeah. You know?
And we have no control of the world. It might blow up tomorrow, so you might as well have a party tonight while you're out there because you got this chance.
Yeah. Plus, how many people even allow themselves improv? Like, the beauty of, I guess the 3 of us in this room is that we've seen the light that is improv. Mm-hmm. Like, we're getting to enjoy our lives through the lens of this freeing art form. But so many people just don't. They don't know that it's there. They don't know that they can do it. Even I have friends that are actors that are just never done improv. And I'm always like, take a class, go do it. You know, they're all...
It's a game changer.
In the early days, we rented a studio in a space that was really for bands to rehearse. The room we recorded in was not soundproof at all, and sometimes bands would rehearse loudly right next door. It was a little embarrassing to our visiting artist guests, but we carried on. We even made a joke out of it for stand-up comedian Bobby Mickey.
So just because it just started, I wanted to make you aware.
Did you hear the...
There are bands.
Okay.
And you're going to hear the bands.
I thought that was background music for the show starting.
Right? I just hit up. There's no buttons, but I was just like, and here we go. No, that's just background music of Austin life. Welcome to Austin, Bobby.
I was definitely upset that the band was so loud in the background of my chat here with stand-up comedian Valerie Tosi, because this was my first ever interview on my own, and she was just so great.
For me, I've always said that I'm like, as amazing it would be to have a bunch of money, it's kind of like, for me, I just want to be able to do what I want to do and survive off of it. Mm-hmm. Like, just to, just make sure that I can pay my bills doing what I love as opposed to working, in a restaurant or whatever forever. Yeah. Even then, I'm still willing to do it. But like, I've always hear those stories of people that's like, well, if I don't get my first co-star in 2 years, I'm leaving. And it's like, what, you can't do it like that.
Yeah.
You just can't.
If you have a backup plan that's like legit in your mind and you're really going to do it, just go do it and get out of the way.
Yeah.
Like, I've been working on projects for years, and my end game was never something crazy famous. I just wanted to work, and I've had fun times with fun people, and the end results are always fun, like enjoyable to watch. When it's filmed, it's like, check that out. Or if it's not, it was like, oh, that was a wonderful night that we all got to experience and be part of. Or, I don't know. I've enjoyed it all, and it's like, I'd like money too. That would be nice. Yeah. But not too much, just enough. Just enough. I mean, I'll take a lot.
I mean, I'm not turning bags of money down.
Yeah, I mean,
Hollywood. But it's so funny you say that about like it being about experiences. That's how I've kind of gone into this whole festival thing with like, at first you're like, I hope there's industry there. I hope people see me. Mm-hmm. But then it's like, you learn very quickly it is not about that. Like, if somebody does, great, but so much of it is the connections you make with the other people that are at the festival, and how much fun it is to meet new people. You know, us sitting here is a perfect example, and just going out and just seeing who else is out there, what they're doing, and just experiencing different cities too. Like, one of my favorite trips so far, I went to Nashville, not for a festival, but just to do shows independently. And I went by myself, stayed with a couple different friends throughout the trip. And I mean, so many times I was off by myself just exploring the city. And everyone's like, where are you now? Like, are you okay? How'd you get there? What's going on? And I'm like, I'm fine. I love exploring new cities. It's so much fun.
Sometimes we talked about living a life as a creative, but sometimes we talked about the weirdest shit imaginable. In this first weird shit clip, Wendell pulls out a saxophone.
Right? Wendell, how old are you?
I'm 28.
You're that old?
Everybody keeps saying that shit, and I'm like, I'm 23.
I thought he was 23.
Bro, I don't know.
Bro!
No, because I got cast as a college kid in a web series recently, and I realized that's because nobody knew I was 28. And
Keep going with that.
I was like, ooh. Anyways, so yeah, I haven't played a saxophone in 12 years. I've been bringing it up over and over again. I figured I would hold myself accountable on the podcast. So I'm going to try. This is going to sound terrible. Just a heads up to anybody. You can turn it down a little bit if you get it up loud. Because I'm just going to try and play a couple of bars. It's going to sound terrible. I'm going to play again on the next podcast that we record. And show my progress, and hopefully there will be some. But here we go. I'm gonna try and play Jurassic Park. I'm just gonna.
This is by John L. Williams?
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. That actually was a lot better than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
That was pretty good.
Oh, it's like riding a bike.
In this clip, a man accosted me and Par Parekh during our interview at the Driscoll Hotel to tell us that the chairs we were sitting on were haunted.
Watch out for this chair. I was here one night sitting there, that chair moved back.
Uh-oh,
Dangerous chair.
In this clip, my story about an ex crashing my car goes down a rabbit hole of weird bits.
I had a boyfriend crash up a car after I broke up with him. Like, took it out. Like, I was like, we gotta break up. I had to move away. The day I was gonna move away, he took it out that morning and crashed it all up and brought it back and was all like, I don't know what happened. And I was like, I'll kill you. And then I thankfully drove, so I drove it to Austin. But the entire, like, first 3 years that I lived in Austin, people were always like, oh, you're a bad driver, because my car just looked like shit.
Right.
And I was like, no, I did not do any of this. I was not party to any of this damage on my car. But it broke the frame of the car, so it was essentially totaled.
Oh my God.
So when we wanted to get a better car, we just brought it to the dealership and we're like, "What? Can you melt it?" And they were just like, I guess so, sure. And so they took it for parts. But like when they look our credit up and it's like for shit, and then I'm handing them a car that's like totally smashed to bits. Why would you give me another car? Like, you know what I mean? Like, visually it looked so bad.
Listen,
like,
everything's bad, but that suit.
You look amazing in that suit.
We're gonna make an exception.
I've never seen a plus size woman in such a well tailored suit. I know.
2 buttons or 3? I think that's the big question. Which one sells it?
That's the deal breaker.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
What's more professional? I mean,
It
maybe
varies.
3 on professional. Honestly, let's be honest, like a double-breasted, like 2 on either side, you know?
Well, that means a different type of business. That's
And then I'm in the Navy.
Oh, I was thinking mafia.
Really?
Well, I mean, back in the day, right? They were all double-breasted.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Like me, a cop, man, like that.
Oh, sure. Well, it's the 40s, clearly, in this story that I'm telling you.
Yes, that's what it reminds me. Every time I see a double-breasted...
And they were like, "Pcha!"
Do you guys not live in a world that has time traveling capabilities? Because I do.
It's so funny, we were just talking about time travel.
Oh, were you?
Right? Yeah, before you came in, I was talking about the Time Machine by H.G. Wells.
I wonder how much money you could get in the 40s for a banged up Saturday night. You can get a lot of money.
They'd be like, oh my God!
We don't even have this technology. It's great.
Oh, and did I forget to mention that Wendell and I are obsessed with Friends? Yeah, so sometimes it dominates the conversation with guests, like this chat with David Crabb.
Yeah.
You gotta be a coffee shop waitress, and you can afford like easily a gigantic apartment that is like well furnished and has a balcony, right?
Come, Wendell, don't try to give me any shit.
You could be a struggling actor who works with a guy who you can't even name his job.
Okay, let's just, if you want to play this game, let me explain to you how that would belong to her grandmother and how it was a rent-controlled apartment, and it was the early 90s, which means it was probably like $300 a month.
But Joey and Chandler lived there for a little bit. How did they
Chandler's
afford
rich.
it?
Chandler is rich.
Okay,
You know, when you watch the whole
Ross's
show-
apartment is shittier than everybody's. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Like, well, it's just simplistic. I don't know. It's a modern
Because he's
looking
a
apartment.
museum worker. How much money do you think he makes? Chandler, the richest of all of them,
You
makes
said
the
that
most.
with an attitude like he was a sex worker.
No,
Jeez, yeah, no, I was gonna say, like, he works for, like, the Museum
He's
of
not a
Natural
museum
History.
worker.
He's a
He's
paleontologist.
Yeah, but he works in a museum.
Studied
He's
and
not like
discovered
works in
dinosaur
research.
bones.
He doesn't do science.
Yeah, but everybody loved dinosaurs in the
science
90s.
he's doing.
Okay.
He has like pieces of dinosaur bones at
right,
home.
just decorating his
Worked
house.
on them.
No, yeah, no,
Get
like,
out of here.
dinosaurs
He did
were
not
way too
go
big in the
to
90s.
places and
He
pick
was
up
dinosaurs were huge in the
He had a
90s.
whole thing with Aisha Tyler about like being up for a grant to go on, like,
Oh, who
he
doesn't
was
get a grant?
scientist.
You can afford to just have a
monkey.
And by the way, can I just say, when you watch the shows nonstop like that, because, you know, without the commercials, they fly by. You can watch like 5 of them. Don't you? When you watch them in mass, don't you be like, oh, what a nightmare life these people are living? Can you imagine just never knowing if you walk outside, there's gonna be like 4? Imagine like your 4 best friends always in the kitchen. Like, imagine the people you love the most. Like, not even people you don't like. It'd be like, get the fuck out of my house.
I know. It's never any of them just sitting around catching up on fucking, you know, bills or like watching TV or anything.
Oh my God.
It's, no matter what, a majority of the friends are always in like Monica and Rachel's apartment.
There's a
all
great
the time.
joke in like season 4 where when the show, I think 3 and 4 and 5 is when I really, really, really enjoyed it, where like they're all sitting around, and I think it's like a cold open, and like nothing is happening, and then finally Phoebe, I think, looks around for Maxine, she's like, why are we always all here? And then I think it's that, and then the title sequence.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, good, they know.
Joey was alone a lot more than any of them. I always felt like everybody would, like, you would walk into that apartment and Joey would either be doing something silly with the duck and the chicken, or
Because he didn't
just
have
like,
a regular job. The rest of them
because
had
he
to
was
go
the only
somewhere.
good whole human being in that group. He was the only person that could be happy with himself.
Wow.
I was rewatching it now, I skipped a lot of portions. I remembered briefly the duck and the chicken, but then I was like, wait, this goes on all the years? This is the stupidest. I thought this was like one episode that everyone tried to forget. No, they always lived in the house with them. 2, I will remember that when I was young, my favorite characters, I've always had a thing for sort of like big Jewish looking dudes. I thought Ross was the bee's knees. Now I'm watching it like, someone get him out of here.
Yeah.
He irks me to no end. And the character I appreciate is, as an adult, that I never appreciated when I was young, because I think in my adult years I recognize some of myself in her, is Monica. I actually really enjoy Monica. I think Monica is an underused, like straight up capital C comic talent. She's a pretty girl, and when they let her have like a nutso episode, I love her.
Yeah, I mean, see that she's a very vindictive, like dark person. Like there was one where she was gonna go, like she was giving a speech at her parents' like renewal of their vows or whatever, and her entire goal with this speech was to make them cry at their own like vow renewal or whatever.
Makes sense to me.
Which I get it, because her parents fucking were assholes.
Oh, you mean she wanted them to cry like because they feel bad, not like cry because she wrote something so touching.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, she wanted to like show how the shittiness of their parent, like how they parented her, like growing up to them, because they were terrible. Like it's one of those things. Like like the preference to Ross over her, I could see would make a monster human being like this. You know,
It's a wonder she lost all the weight. Really.
Well, I imagine that's like a lot of caffeine and just never being happy anymore. You know, like that's a.
Yeah, because sadness never makes you fat.
And then to be like a chef too is also like you would think that would exacerbate some sort of past.
She's like an alcoholic who works at a bar. Well, how does that work? I don't know.
You know, it is like one of the tropes that the show plays out so much that like I didn't remember when I was. Well, times change, right? So hopefully we evolve and we're more sensitive to certain things.
Fingers crossed.
The what?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, right. We'll see. The big girl jokes I thought were like, like I don't know if this would fly now, and all the fucking dated like gender dynamic bullshit. So much of it, especially with the guys.
Chandler
God
could not
forbid.
be called gay.
God forbid him and Joey have like a loving moment or need to hug or like compliment each other on a shirt.
Right.
And like I get it, like I laugh when it happens, but I'm like, oh, it's so.
Or like when Ross and Joey figured out that like they slept the best by like snuggling with each other on the couch or whatever. Like that was the most comfortable sleep, and just how much of an issue that was
They're
for them.
like so mad about the whole thing. You're like, fucking
Chandler-
take a nap, relax your life. Like
Yeah.
Chandler wasn't going to invite his own father to his wedding.
the entire Kathleen Turner plot line.
I'm not there yet. I'm so excited to get there. What season? Do you remember?
I don't know.
Okay, so you're right there around the proposal.
right
and
at the-
it's
right after
probably
that.
in. So it's probably in that
they're
season
about
because
to meet her.
it's all gearing up for the
They're
wedding.
about to meet her because they go to meet her so that Monica can meet the father of the.
Yeah, see, that's one of the few nice things Monica ever did was like forced Chandler to reconcile with his father, even though to take everything as
You have actually seen these before. We're not.
I mean,
actually
but
blowing it
not
for
like
you.
all of them. I've seen them sporadically. Like I didn't really watch in a dedicated way when it was on TV after season like 4 or 5.
Oh, I was going to say, I believe Wendell and I
But I know
watched
Kathleen
every
Turner.
single episode at least 14 times.
The Kathleen Turner thing, I'm so excited to get to because I just feel like it's so out of character from what I've heard about Kathleen Turner. To agree to like, I felt
Play a
like
man.
to agree to play like a
to
man with a
acknowledge
sex
her own
change. I thought was
manliness.
really, it was
Yeah.
really like, and I thought like how cool, like how awesome that she was like.
That being
I
said,
got a husky voice.
the argument here is that I was trying to make was that it's very much in bad taste. All of the jokes are, it would not fly now in any way.
Well, now it would be
because
like,
it's
why
a
didn't you hire a transgender
human
actor?
person,
Right, yeah.
And this, all the jokes they make are just
Awful.
horrible.
I'm not.
And Chandler's real problem isn't that his dad became a bad dad or like walked out on the family. It was his dad made the choice or like or realized that he was gay or was a
I don't
was
know.
trans,
I believe that Chandler
and-
was most upset about the selfishness because he was always mad that he wanted to spend more time with like the pool boy than he wanted to spend with him.
Right.
Same with the
Or-
mother who wanted to go write and do her things versus
Yeah.
spend any
I
time
feel
with
like-
him. No one cared about hanging out with Chandler, and that's why he's the most mad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I love
it always
Chandler,
seemed
though.
like Chandler
Chandler's
was
my
posing.
favorite.
Yeah, I think. I
Well,
think for me, Chandler, Joey, Monica. I mean,
Joey's
the two
my
I'm
favorite.
least interested in, unless they give Ross like a literally clown level comedic, like leather pants or suntan booth. Like you know how
Yeah.
Ross has his like bottle episode that's like a Seinfeld script that got rejected like every season.
Yeah.
I love those. But in general, in the melees of people, like him and Rachel,
He
which I
dates
think
his
it's
own
so funny.
students.
The show is hinging on their relationship from like beginning to end,
Yeah.
and they are the two people that I'm just least invested in.
Right. No, you were invested earlier. You know, like when it mattered. When they would show like that video, the home video of like prom night or whatever, and how
Oh,
Ross came
yeah.
down and was going to take Rachel and all that
The
shit.
mustache.
Like, that's when it mattered. But like, by the time they actually get together towards the end of the show, it's completely not. Who cares? They're both like doing very separate things. I almost wanted her to end up with Joey more than I ever wanted.
1,000%. 1,000%.
After episode 32, Delia left as co-host to move to Chicago and work on her own comedy dreams. So we did a little switcheroo, and we got a new co-host, Patrick Neese.
I'm Amy.
I'm Wendell. And I'm Patrick.
And
this is
Yes,
But Why?
Podcast.
Before Delia actually moved away, we insisted that she come in so we could interview her. This episode, number 55, is nothing but bits. It's hilarious, and it really made me miss having co-hosts to riff with.
By the way, when you guys talk about yourselves as children, I just imagine you, but smaller. Like you
That's
exactly
exactly-
now, but
I was just
smaller.
gonna say, like, yeah.
like, not like, you know, because kids have weird proportions.
Yeah, they have
But
giant
it's just
eyeballs.
like, it's just you guys scaled down.
No, that's exactly
Yeah,
what I was.
Yeah.
I can literally show you photos. I look exactly the same.
I mean,
except for I'm a tiny
Picture
person.
me with a beard, but, you know, 4 times. That's what's in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time we talk about you as a child when you were a kung fu fighter,
Yes.
that's what I imagine. I imagine just tiny you with like a kung fu outfit and your beard.
I love the idea of I love the title Kung Fu Fighter. When you were a Kung Fu Fighter, like you're cleaning the streets up, or I don't know, saving a dojo.
Yeah, between the ages
Twice.
of 7 and 10, Patrick was like Iron Fist Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What I guess
It's
like
from a song, everybody.
it just kind of makes me sad that like you were growing up and you were a kung fu fighter, and then you got older and now you're the villain in a children's movie. What happened in between, Patrick? What happened?
That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, you don't get the thing you want for Christmas a couple of times. That'll do it.
Consecutively.
Yeah, it's just it tears you down.
It's bad for everyone.
Just wanted the Mario watch, you know? Just wanted to play Mario in school.
According to movies, it only needs one bad day to really just turn you into a supervillain.
That's right.
Or, you know.
Well, also, according to movies, if you laugh with a woman, then you're in love.
Not to mention trying on hats.
Yeah.
Anytime hats are tried on, you are in love.
Yeah, and I don't get it. Like, you're not saying anything. You're just laughing you're laughing at each other, and now you're in love.
Well, with love, you don't have to say anything.
I think Amy just took a shit. Oh no.
Patrick was a great new co-host, and he had some funny thoughts about theater to chat about.
They had actual curtains at one point in their lives that would close and open and go up and down. These were...
At the theater?
No, just like that type of person. Yeah. They've experienced a real theater where there's hardwood on the floor and there's lights perhaps that shine into your eyes from below.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, like stage pieces and stuff, you know.
Yeah, they went through a theater history.
All of the windows in my house are covered with Duvetine.
Just block it out.
It's just
I don't want anything coming in.
No, there's not as a blackout curtain, but because that's what my husband and I own because we've done theater for so long. So it's like
super expensive.
We just, yeah, but I mean, you get it. People give you stuff
yeah.
at the end of gigs all the time, and so my husband and I are just the type of people that keep those things.
Yeah.
And so our whole house is like every window just looks like a little theater. You know.
I will never turn down gaff tape. By the way,
never.
So, no. Yeah, if you offer that to me, I'm taking it.
Yeah, you should. It's very expensive. But if any of mine goes missing, I'll know it's you.
I didn't know you had any.
I always do. Come
just
on.
laying around your place on it?
Tons.
The game is on.
Yeah, next time I have to look after some cats or something, you better do a count. That's all I'm saying.
I'm doing a count for sure. Oh my god, that's funny.
I kind of miss, like, I wish more theaters had actual, like, curtains, so when you're done, they close, and then you get to come out and do a bow and get flowers thrown at you.
Oh yeah, come on. Nobody would know what to do with themselves if there were curtains that closed. People don't even know how to bow now.
They'd be on fire.
Like, at the end of a show, guys. I've done the neighborhood for friggin' 7 years. At the beginning of every show, I have to go, could you go out on stage and bow at the end?
Yeah, we all...
Everyone walks out and they're like, ah!
Well, some of us are still covered in food, party poles, and are half naked.
Or are hanging from the ceiling,
well, that
whatever.
Happens, yeah.
Like fake puke still dripping out their lips. Now I'm shy. I'm gonna go hide now.
Sometimes I definitely feel, after a show, I feel ashamed of myself in a way.
Of course. Of course you do. Yeah. You've just like walked out on stage to a bunch of strangers and been like, let me bare my soul to you. Let me show you the like, you know, the like meaty sad parts because that's what makes a comedy character. And then when the lights come on, it's like, no, I'm not that guy. Shut up. Don't look at me.
That's why I need that curtain. I need it to just close for a second. Let me cry. Then they'll come back open and we're good to go.
Now I just want a video from like the backstage where the curtains close and you cry a little and then it opens back up and you're like, oh.
You find me some curtains, I'll do it.
In this series of clips, we talk about connecting with the audience. Listen in for thoughts from stand-up comedian Simply Courtney, improviser Shyla Ray, stand-up comedian Kai Krebs, and improviser Velvet Duke.
I would laugh because I tell people I would always end up somehow in front of a crowd of people as a kid. And after a while, it became like I became numb to it. Like, they're like, whoa, you're going to go up and present in front of the church? Because, like, we'd have a program. I ended up being an usher, and I was the only kid, so I was the church baby, which meant whenever we had a visiting church come over and they wanted somebody to do something cute, I was the one that got volunteered. Yeah. And that was from the age of 6 all the way up to almost 20. Yeah. And so I was laughing because I was like, dude, I feel like I've always been in front of a group of people forever. And then it was like, I think one of the first things people said when I went and did my first open mic, wow, you look really comfortable up there. I was like, dude, I've essentially done that. I didn't necessarily go up and tell jokes and have a plan always, but I was always in front of people having to do something.
It's like how you built relationships and stuff like that, you know? Like that's, yeah, no, I get that.
Parks and Rec, I mean, I was the guy that did the trainings. I had to lead trainings, I had to explain stuff. And so all of those things were going on. And I was like, wow, I kind of want to do this, but I don't know what. I remember sitting in, what do we have? We had I think it was accounting. Yeah, I think it was accounting. It was like it was a 6:30 to 9 o'clock class on Tuesdays at Texas State. And this was probably my junior year, maybe senior year. I was sitting in class. It was like maybe about 300 people in the class with you. And we'd sit there. We'd all probably get there about 6:15. You want to get in so you get checked in and all that. And I remember I would sit there before the professor got in the room. And I'll be like, yo, I'm going to just go in the front and just say a joke. And I was like, what the hell? That's weird. I was like, do you really want attention like that? And that's what will stop me from trying it. But every once in a while, I'll be like, I bet you if I just went up there and just told 2 jokes, how would they take it? Dude. I just thought about it, and I never did it. But I remember little things like raising my hand and giving an answer to something. I would want to just slide a joke in to just test it out. And I was like, you are crazy. Why would you just tell the right answer? And so I never did it, but I always had that feeling. I remember having that feeling for like years. And then so finally when I did it in 2012, it was like, confirmation of what I'd been feeling this whole time.
In terms of the idea that the audience is somehow participating, one of the traditional ways of doing that is to take a suggestion.
Sure.
And I don't think that suggestions are necessary for that, but I do think that it is necessary that everybody who does improv understands that that audience wants to be a part of it with you. Mm-hmm. They want to experience it with you, that's part of what's created the hunger in them to be there. And I just think that the more honest and open and vulnerable that you can be to your audience, the more that they get on a visceral level what's going on. But even if they don't sort of pick up, oh my, look at how brave and clever those intellectual giants that I've just seen are, that they were able to get up there and do that without a script. Even if they sort of leave the show going, well, I don't know how much of that was pre-planned or whatever. To me, that's not the point. The point is that they have a good experience and that they feel engaged, like they also were a part of it. And that can happen just as much in live theater that is scripted as it can in improv. When people go to any form of live theater, even if it's scripted, they know that what they're seeing still exists in a way, just in this moment, for their eyes, for them, that it's not on television, that it won't be repeated over and over again in syndication, that it exists in that moment, and that anything, in a way, can happen in that moment, that a show is different from night to night, even if it's scripted. And I think that the only difference that we have between us and scripted theater is that we attract a different group of people, and that we're afraid that it's not going to be a good enough quality for those people who come. And so we want them to understand, well, I just made it up right now. And I think if we just kind of, a lot of times, jettisoned that fear that they would be kinder to us as an audience if they understood that we couldn't plan it, and instead assumed that they were going to be kind to us as an audience because they just want to have fun and they just want to be a part of what's going on. I think that would maybe change our frame a little bit away from really wanting them to understand what's going on and instead letting them be a part of what's going on.
Yeah, for me, I want to let them in on the magic. It's like I almost want every audience to be my level 1 class. It's like, guys, do you know how amazing this is? This is crazy. You know, like literally just us standing in this room together talking. It's amazing. You know.
Yes.
See, as a large group, I have a hard time with them, but individually, I'm fine with them.
Yeah, no, if I just pick like a really attractive, like put together person and I can tell that immediately, then yeah, that'd be awesome if I were just
No, I'm
doing
looking for the person
I'm their
who
private
looks
dancer.
like this is the best time they've had in a month or two,
Mhm, mhm.
where like they're holding a lot of beers with them, but they're alone. There's an open seat on either side of them, and
Yeah.
there's couples on either side so that they're extra sad.
See, I'm the opposite. I go for the people that like look like they're like not sure whether or not they're ready to have a good time.
Mhm.
I really because I think like the nature of comedy, like really like everyone, like the people who are going there for the most part are usually going to laugh and have a good time or forget about what's going on. So like whenever that does happen, it feels very like normal ebb and flow of life in comedy sort of situation. But it's like the idea of somebody who's like, I'm gonna go to this comedy show, and then they just sit there with like arms crossed and like a straight face the whole time is so fascinating to me. I'm like, you knew what you were signing up for. Like maybe not the person specifically, but you knew that this was just gonna be like jokes. So what's going on, dude? I'm just like, I'm gonna make your stoic ass laugh. And I like to try to rope those people in, because that is like what feels like success for me. It's
Yeah.
like when you can get somebody who's just like having a shit time to break and like be like, okay, yeah, I'll leave the shit. I'll put the shit aside.
Is that for both stand-up and sketch, or stand-up more, or improv, or...
Oh, definitely more for like stand-up.
Yeah, okay.
Whenever it's like improv and sketch, I honestly completely forget that the audience is there.
Yeah, I try to look at the back line.
Like I just try to like have as much fun in those moments as I can, because I know that if we're having fun and like genuinely enjoying what's going on, like they will too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're too heady about it, or like thinking about like, are they laughing? Like you're not actually doing the thing. Like you're not making art. You're seeking approval, which I think is the wrong way to approach it.
I think that's how my issues with the audience started, was being able to communicate that to people, where it's like, don't worry about it. They're here to have fun. They're already in the state of mind. Don't worry about it. But it ended up going really bad, and now I'm all like, the plebes.
Well, I definitely, when I notice more laughs when it's something I didn't think was funny, and then it's like, oh shit, now I have to, in improv specifically, if somebody laughs, or a group of people laugh at something that I didn't think was the joke, but then it is the joke, it's like, well, now I have to tweak what I'm doing because they think it's funny, and we can make that a game or whatever.
You second guess yourself all the time.
All the time.
100% of the time. Because Patrick's in Honeypot with me and Shay and Scarlett and Alexa, and I cannot tell you how many times before a show this guy's just like, okay, all right, I got to think about it. And like you mentioned that you're nervous a lot, and I'm just like,
always.
And then like I'm standing there and I'm like half in the bag every time, and I'm just like, let's go make some fucking jokes, bruh.
One of the theatrical gigs that I got was an Eric Bogasian play that was all of these men. It's all men, and everyone gets a little bit of a. I'll give you the name afterward, but everybody gets their little monologue bit, and I'm like, the character that I'm playing doesn't make sense to be on stage. So I fought. I mean, I didn't have to fight hard, but I fought to have my character in the middle of the audience. And so, I'm breaking the traditions of theater or whatever, but it's like, my character actually is. It's like, what is this play about? What are you doing? And like, I'm yelling at somebody on stage. So to me, it made sense to do that from the sideline, the back line or whatever. It's like, okay, what? Okay. No, let's steep ourselves in this reality and do that. So I'd much prefer to play with that fourth wall than to honor it and pretend that we're on display and, you know, maybe some of the emotions and pathos that we're feeling seeps through. I don't know. I want to reach the people. Come on, let me see you cry. I'm going to make you cry, or you're going to make me cry. Or you're going to make me laugh. Oh, make me laugh. Oh, I much prefer that kind of engagement. So yes, improv definitely gives me that far more than theater. And I thought, if I'm going to be doing a theatrical production, it better give me that license, because I'm going to do it anyway. So I might as well build it into the reality. The other thing I want to share about it is, as much as I know that's true for me, I also am big on consent. So I started off both productions saying, I'm going to be interacting with you to the amount that you want me to. If I come to you and you say no, you say go away, I'm gone. It's just, so I let people know right from the outset that I am going to be engaging. I will be direct about that, but I also will back off, so that it actually allowed by the time that we got to the part where things are heavy and I'm asking them to share something heavy, they felt comfortable enough to do so. And that was the other part of a theatrical production to me. It's like, it's not one to many. I'm not interested in one to many so much as one to one to one to one, and having people beside going, yeah, like that captures me. And so when I'm doing improv, a lot of it's comedy, but not all of it is. And I'm just as jazzed for those moments where we can't stop laughing as I am for those moments where it's like, I want to laugh again for a moment because I'm feeling so many other things, and, you know, letting those be true.
Doing a podcast about people in entertainment meant I had the opportunity to interview my theatrical inspiration, my Uncle Joe Pacheco. I love him very much, and it is always great to hear his stories.
Things seem to be going well as far as like you doing a bunch of plays, working on different projects with David Rabe and other playwrights. You had good friends, and you were putting a lot of live theater in. What made you decide to move to change venues and do film stuff, or did you get film stuff when you were in New York and then got a taste for it and moved?
Well, you know, New York back then mainly had a couple of shows. You know, now they have a ton. They have a lot of stuff, but they had Sopranos and they had Law and Order.
Right.
Everybody did Law and Order. I think I did 8 of those things.
Yep.
So, yeah, if you were a New York actor, you did a lot of Law and Order.
I love catching you on Law and Order.
Yeah.
It's my
There
favorite.
was also a long period of time where I went home a few times because, you know, your grandmother got sick, and I went home and stayed home for quite a while there. And then when my dad was ill, I was home for a while. So I kind of popped out of my career in my 30s a little bit here and there. I would do plays locally in Boston, but I went home to be with family for a while.
Yeah.
And then I got that great job with that company, and I stayed home I was working in the corporate world for a while. And that's when your grandmother was sick. And after she passed away, the people who own that company, the PR company that I work for, moved out to LA, and they are now film producers.
Oh.
And they said to me, why don't you move out to LA and, start auditioning? And I had a really good job with them, and fortunately, I was in a financial position to do it, so I moved. And I've been out here about 10 years now. And it's been going really, pretty well lately. But it took a couple of years to because you're going to a new city.
Yeah.
You have to meet new casting people. They don't know who you are, and so after a certain amount of years, I'm sort of in the pool now, and they know me, and so it's a little bit more consistent,
Yeah. How many years did you have to, sort of spend getting to know everybody when you first got there?
It took about 5 years, because, the way it is out here, and it's probably the same way in New York, but, your really big agents like your CAA and your William Morris. And when there's a film project that goes out or a TV project that goes out on what they call the breakdown, they're going to see those big agents first, and they're going to see their actors first. And then if they get through and they have a couple of plots available, they might see some more agents. But there's so many agents out here and actors that sometimes if your agency sends you and a packet to them, they might not even see you or look at you. So you might never get an audition. And it took a lot of years of not getting auditions. And then finally, I would book one thing and I would do well, and they would say, "Oh, who's that actor?" And then, it just sort of train rolls. And then I, 6 or 7 months ago, did that Major Crimes. Mm-hmm. And that was really good for me. I did a few episodes of Major Crimes. I met those producers, and it's like you're rediscovered because they go, "Wow, who are you? Oh, we like you, good actor." And they start to hire you, and a lot of times they hire who they know.
In this one episode, when Wendell and Patrick interviewed Aaron Walther without me, Wendell started this funny game where he asked his girlfriend to marry him at the end of each episode, and then we kept doing it.
You like writing a lot, though, right? Is that kind of something you've been doing?
Sure. I mean, sure. Okay. I don't think anybody I don't think anybody likes writing. I think people write because they have to write. Mm. It's just something that and that's the.
You mean like for them?
Yeah. If you don't write, you'll go crazy.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And that's the conclusion I came to with acting too. Is don't be an actor unless you cannot conceive of yourself doing anything other than that.
Yeah.
So I could conceive of myself doing something else, and so I did it.
See, yeah, no, I like writing and performing because it's some of the only parts of my life that I just try to do good at, and then the rest of it I take the break. The rest of it's a break, and I just don't try as much at anything. and then yeah, it's just the performing and writing that I get a real kick off of succeeding in. Everything else seems really mundane.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, everything else I very much half-ass, save for my relationship with my girlfriend, kinda. I'd say I 3/4 assed that. I 3/4 assed that. She doesn't listen to this. She won't. I've asked her to.
The one time. If this were.
Yeah. No, it's just.
If this were an old play, that she would listen this time. And
I was gonna say, I'll do, next time she asks me, because sometimes she'll be like, "What's your favorite one?" Jump on her, and I'll be like, "Anyone but that Aaron Walther one." What a droll, deadpan guy. I'm just going to make it sound like this one was terrible.
You should ask her to marry you
on
in an episode. Yeah, and just never say anything.
Never bring it up.
Yeah.
And just see, oh man, I could make it probably another 5 years in this.
And then it'll come up in a fight, why haven't you asked me to marry you yet? And you're like, I did, episode 69.
Just pull my phone up and start playing it.
I don't know. Why haven't I asked?
Just hold the ring up, just been holding on to this for half a decade.
That's a great test.
I like that. I actually like that. Yeah, no.
Put it out on the internet for strangers to hear, and then maybe them.
And then slowly over time grow to resent the lack of response.
Make it a little bit, do it every episode.
Oh, yeah.
Make it more ornate every episode.
Oh my god. That's sweetly romantic. I kind of like that, because then at a certain point it's going to be well, yeah, and then I just make a supercut of it. Marry me, Michelle. Michelle, marry me. Michelle, marry me.
Hey, Michelle, marry Wendell.
That'll do it. Michelle, marry me. All right, I'll see you guys later.
Unfortunately, after a lot of episodes working together, Patrick and Wendell both moved on from the podcast. I was sad to see them go, but our schedules just no longer meshed. And that's when I started doing the podcast on my own. It was scary at first, but then I realized that through the podcast, I could reconnect with some of my creative friends from back in the day. Listen in as I chat with my college pal, Helen Krieger, about what it was like for her to break into writing for TV.
How long have you been in Los Angeles now?
Since the summer of 2014, because I came out here to go to USC, so that was the end of August of 2014, and then it was a 2-year program. So yeah, so I came out.
How you got into that, because that seems like a very prestigious program. How did you get into there? because you were a few years out of college. Like, it wasn't like you went straight from college to it, or maybe that's their thing. They would never take somebody right out of college. But like, tell me about that whole journey.
Totally. I mean, you're very sweet to say you're a few years out of college. Yeah, just a few.
We're the same age. I'm not telling everyone how old you are.
Good, great. No, but yeah.
Unfortunately, my audience knows how old I am, so it's rough. Sorry.
Damn it. We went to college together, but I was a freshman when you were a senior.
When I was 8 years out, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I love it. But
don't let me bring us back to the first time we went to a rave. That might come up. All right, back to you.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it. Our first rave. Okay, yeah. So so a lot of this has to do with my husband too, who really encouraged me to go here. When I first met him, like for our very first date, I was talking about how I wanted to go to UNO for their film program. Or I wanted to go to UNO for the creative writing program. And then as he and I got to know each other and spent more time together, he eventually encouraged me to write a script for the first time, like a screenplay, instead of I had been writing short stories and working on a novel for a million years. And when I first wrote a script, I was like, oh, this is all the things that I like about writing. This is just the story and the dialogue. I don't have to describe how somebody's fingernails are like half moons. I don't have to have a bunch of analogies and metaphors. Just fuck all of that. I can just tell a story and have dialogue. And those are my favorite pieces. And so I really enjoyed it. And, we did, I wrote and then we produced together a feature film that my husband acted in and directed, called Flood Streets. That's on Amazon. You guys can watch it. It's free on Amazon Prime.
Very good.
But then that made me realize that I really wanted to do TV, because it was basically this ensemble. It was kind of like Shortcuts, but set in post-Katrina New Orleans. And that made me realize that I really wanted to do TV and have these sort of ensemble things. And so I applied a couple of times to the missioner program at the University of Texas at UT Austin. Never got in. I think the first year they did not get my application, and then they covered. But I think the second year they did get my application, and I just didn't get in. But I wanted to go to that program because it was close, so that I wouldn't have to uproot my life, and then they pay you to go there. But the more that I started realizing, because a lot of film stuff was coming to New Orleans at the time, which is where I was living, and the more that I realized how the film industry worked, I realized I really had to be in LA. And I was starting to get frustrated with different projects that I tried in New Orleans, not really getting off to a huge start. I'd always had fun and I was learning a lot, but I felt like my career wasn't really progressing. And so I wanted to go back to school to get an MFA, because then at the very least I could teach. And Joseph was the one, my husband was the one who was like, if you're going to go back to school for film, you should at least try to get into the best schools. And I was like, oh, I tried to get into UT Austin. And he's like, no, try to get into LA. And I was like, are we really going to pay for that A? And B, are we really going to move there? And he's like, oh, just see if you get in. So I applied to USC and UCLA, and USC was the one that I really wanted to get into because they are more focused on TV, and they're also, the vibe is that they're more industry focused, whereas UCLA is a little bit more indie focused. And I had already done an indie. I wanted to get in the club. I didn't want to work outside of the club anymore. I was ready to, any of the clubs, I wanted to join them all. Any way to sell out, I wanted to do it. And then eventually, put in my own twist and put in my own, opinions and view on life once I'm inside. Yeah. And so I applied to both of them, and the USC application has I can't remember if you turn in maybe the first 10 pages of some work you've previously written, but the huge part of the application is these essays, and then you have to write these 2 scenes that are no more than 5 pages. And they're very specific. They give you a prompt for them. And I don't know if the prompt changes from year to year, but it tends to be something for my year, it was write 2 scenes. And the first scene, it's New Year's Eve, and there's 2 people who are very much opposites in whatever way you decide. 2 people who are opposites go into an elevator on New Year's Eve and get stuck in the elevator. And so it's that kind of typical kind of setup, but they're really looking at how do you create the characters, how do you move the story forward, how do you do it all in a scene that's under 5 pages long. And then the second one was two people who live together. They can be any relationship to each other, but they live together. One of them wants to leave and the other one doesn't want them to. And that can mean whatever you want it to mean. And so, it was really interesting once I got in to see we all like shared our writing exercises from that prompt. And it was so interesting to see how different everybody's were and how many the different ways there are of interpreting that. But I thought it was cool because it was a way of showing, because USC is so industry focused, it was a way of showing that you can shine on assignment, which is what TV writing is. It's you bringing your voice and your experience, but to somebody else's show, most of the time to somebody else's show. And even if it's your own show, to somebody else's network, to somebody else's lineup. So you know what I mean? Like there's always going to be some kind of box that you're going to have to put this thing in. And can you still make it new and interesting and exciting and different and something that only you can write? That I didn't learn so much at USC, but that I learned even more working for Kenya Barris, is he's really big on proprietary stories. Like, what's a story that only you can tell? You should only be telling those stories because no one else can do that better than you. So tell those stories that you're the only one who can.
Yeah, that's so great. I like the idea of those two prompts as well because they deal with relationships between people who know each other and then people who don't, and that's two possible kinds of relationships you can have with strangers and with people you're connected to. So it's like, hey, can you write both of these? It's like, oh yeah, okay. That's so fascinating. I also would be like, I love the idea that there's likely a staff who you've probably met at this point who reads all of that. Like that there are people whose whole job it is to read all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can't even imagine. And they do that, and they also they look at your resume. They look at because once I got into the program, there are I went to the Writing for Screen and Television program of the School of Cinematic Arts of the MFA program. So there's a bunch of different branches of the cinema school, but for the writing one, they accept 32 students a year. So it is a 2-year program. So at any moment, they have a cap of 64 students in that program at any time. So they know everybody that gets in. And there were people from Alaska to Hawaii, America, Turkey, Afghanistan. Obviously there are people from all over the world with tons of different experiences, people who had been working in production for a really long time, there were a couple people, to answer your question, who were just out of college, who were just out of undergrad, but they had already made some kind of a big move. And it's interesting because I'll notice, so my year, we were all slightly older and more experienced than the year before us or after us, because it was a slightly different committee of people choosing. And so it's so much. This has made me realize how much, when you get rejected from something, how fickle it all is.
Here's a clip in which I chatted with my bestie from my 20s, Irene Carroll, about how she got involved with the New York City improv scene.
That was a big reason why Gary Austin eventually dissolved with the Groundlings, because they wanted to become this conglomerate, and Gary was like, I'm not following, in his kind of hippie-ness that is Gary in his own right, even though he would have fucking hated that I just said that, but he just didn't want to fall under any kind of delegation or law of how to teach. He's like, I'm going to teach what I teach to whoever I want to teach,
They're trying to squelch him. He's like, I'm a butterfly. I fly. I can't just be caged or whatever. Get out of here. I got to go do it. Yeah. Tell me about your interaction with him. How did you meet him? What did he... Because you work on a format that is his format now.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's very true. So basically, at that same time, I was kind of leaving Improvisation News, and I was going into being the AD at Gotham. I was also still taking these workshops that would happen through the company that I'm most a part of now, which is Ann Theater Company. And that he would come into town, Gary would come into town to teach various workshops. And that company I knew about because of Scotty, who was also doing Improvisation News. So he was kind of working at both places. And so Scotty went, you really got to take classes with Gary and Scotty's mentor, Michael Gelman, who was like the dean of Meredith's at Second City, Chicago for a long time. And with this other friend of his, David Rosowski. So they would all come to New York and teach this like 4-day workshop. And so I took this 4-day workshop with Scotty and Gelman and Rosowski and Gary. And that experience that I had with Gary that time sort of opened the door to like me becoming friends with him. And it was, so anytime he came to New York, I would take his workshop. And anytime I went home to California, I would take Gary's workshop. And it just sort of, built this relationship with him and talking about what improv is and what the work is and what teaching's about. And like, I was really lucky to kind of, and that's the thing about Gary too, is that, he did that for every single one of his students. Like, I'm not alone in this like story that I'm telling you. Like, when he passed away and I went to his memorial on April 1st, he passed away April 1st last year. And then he had a memorial like in the summertime of last year.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And yeah, it's a bummer, but at the same time, like Gary left like this huge body of work with all these people, so here we were in this memorial, and Gary, these stories kept like coming up, and I just went, that's my story. Like, for instance, there was this one woman who started to talk about how she met Gary, and then like, the next time she talked to Gary, she went, hey, I'm this person and we met here. And he went, I know who you are. That's exactly what Gary did to me. Like, hey, I took your workshop last time and I'm this person. Hi. And he went, yeah, Irene, I know who you are. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm not alone in this amazing man's, teaching. He gave this gift to so many other people, which is amazing. Like, he was the ultimate teacher. So I just, he had been sick for a long time. He had been living with cancer for a long time, and he just eventually lost the battle. But he was also very ready to go after living with cancer for like 20 years. So,
shit.
Yeah, it was a long, long battle for him.
Yeah.
And for me, more than anything, he taught us this form. This form is like this very interesting, intricate, complex form that is not easy to teach. And somehow this group of people in New York learned it and got it, from him. And so it was more important than ever to me to like carry on this work here in New York for people to see it. So it was called The Classroom. And basically, you can kind of say it's a mono scene with shenanigans is kind of what the form is. But yeah,
fun. I love the idea I love the word shenanigans.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. He sounds like a wonderful person.
He was amazing in every way. Yeah. Oh my God. I like miss him so much. And yet, that's why it's so important than ever, I feel like, to kind of do this work with that he does and like keep New York in the know, because, we live in these New York bubbles or fill in this city bubble, and you kind of aren't always super aware of the whole scope of who came from what and where. I mean, people just read one book and then that's it. And they're like, oh, I know how to do improv now, and it's like, no, you got to read all the books, guys. You got to know about Viola. You got to know about her theater games. You got to know about like how she taught children and inclusion. And like, that's the whole point,
At one point, I got to talk to Larry Hankin. And for a huge Friends fan like me, talking to Mr. Heckles was a big deal. I cannot even remember how I was lucky enough to land this guy's contact info, but I did. And what a boon. Turns out Larry was part of the team that started the committee in San Francisco, and he shared his experiences from those early days of improv.
I was just, an actor who just wanted to improv for the rest of my life in Second City. I mean, I still do. I love him. I can't do it anymore, by the way. you have to, because I haven't improvised in years. Yeah. That's a muscle, man. You got to do that. You got to do that, or it just goes away. Okay. So me and we were let go. Jack and I were let go, and I hung around Second City and slept on one of the actors' couches because I didn't have any money once I was fired from Second City. So I stayed there for about a month. I would come down and hang out, at night because I had no place else to go. I was trying to figure out, should I go back to New York? Should I go to the West Coast, to Hollywood, try to be an actor? So after the show, or during the show, they had a bar downstairs in the theater, the Second City in Chicago. They had a bar downstairs. And so I would hang out with the people, with the actors who either were in the class or who were in the show but weren't on for a while. So they would go down and just hang in the bar until they get a cue from a microphone. Hey, Larry, come upstairs. You're in the next scene. So I would be... And in walks somebody, comes in and says, "There's a Larry Hankin here." So I go, "Yeah, that's me. What?" He says, "There's a car outside. There's some people want to talk to you." So I go outside, and it was in the middle of the winter. I think it was like a very slight snow outside. I remember it was cold. It was freezing outside. And because I just ran out, cold. I just ran outside, and there was all these people who turned out to be the committee later on in San Francisco. But now they were in this car in outside. And Alan Meyerson, the director, who was the director who auditioned me, one of the people who auditioned me in New York to get the job to go to St. Louis. So Alan Meyerson is in this car in Chicago, and four strange people I'd never seen before. And the top of the car, it was like a station wagon, and the top of the car was full of luggage, just tied down, suitcases and bags and stuff. And the car was crowded. There was like 4 or 5 people. There was 2 kids, I think, in the car. It was just jammed. And Alan said, "Hey, we're going. I heard you were fired. They were just left from New York. He was running the company in New York all the time, even when I was at St. Louis. They had quit. He had quit and taken 4 of his best students with him and their families, their wife and kids. And they were going to San Francisco to open up their own theater called The Committee. And they wanted me in because he remembered me from one of the classes he taught in New York. And he said, he thought I was pretty good. So he said, "Hey, we need another person. Let's go." And I said, "No, I'm not getting in that car. I don't know where you're going." "Yeah, San Francisco." "Yeah, right, sure." "No, I'm not going until you send me a ticket. I'm not getting in this car. There's too many people." I mean, there really was. I mean, it was packed. They were even glad I was in it. So they drove off into the night. I thought, well, I'll never see that of them again. But I did give him my address in New York, and back in New York, I got a ticket. They actually sent me a plane ticket. So I wasn't doing anything. I was, back to doing stand-up in coffee houses and stuff. So I went to San Francisco with the committee. I flew there. They were building a theater, so we didn't even know if this was going to be a success. They had raised enough money. They renovated a Chinese basketball court in San Francisco, in North Beach, and we're building a theater. So we didn't even know if we had jobs, really. And we were all living together in one apartment, a big railroad flat. All of us, families, 6 actors, 2 kids, wives, and the director and his wife. And we opened, and we were, we struggled a little in the beginning. We only, if the rule was, this is how we struggled. If there was more people in the company than there was in the audience, we didn't have to do a show. So we did that a lot.
Yeah, I hear
that. So we had those rules. And then finally it started to build, and we started to get great reviews. And then one day, I'll never forget this, man. It was one of the highlights of my life. Is we were waiting backstage to open. It was like a Saturday night or something. And I was with Hamilton Camp. I remember that. He was my best friend in the company. And he was a folk singer, I think, but, before he got into the community. I said, Hamilton, come outside. You got to see this. You got to see this. He said, what? I said, just come outside. Come outside. So I said, okay. We had about 15, 20 minutes before the show was on. So we walked out into the Columbus Boulevard Avenue, where our theater was. And we walked outside, went across the street, and there was a line for the committee around the block. It was amazing. It was the first time that I'd ever seen anything like that. And from then on, we were just a smash hit.
Looking for new guests one day, I got connected to a Facebook group for improvisers from all over the world. I did a post calling for new guests and got a lot of response. It absolutely expanded my view of creative perspectives. And since our first international guest, we've interviewed almost 50 improvisers from all over the world. I talked to Christian Brew, a British improviser in Tokyo, getting the most fun out of the scene.
Tokyo is you mentioned competition. So, the two groups, we're not in competition. The demographic for our audiences are completely different. The type of improv we do is completely different. You've got Pirates of Tokyo Bay that does the short form bilingual. So we have to bring in some of a little bit more pantomime slapstick stuff to grab the Japanese audience, particularly when they're listening to the English scenes. You've got to grab their attention. And then you've got the Tokyo Comedy Store, which do more of the Keith John Stone stuff. And then we do an improvised musical in the second half. So the audiences are totally different. So we're not in competition at all. And the other thing you mentioned, actually, was that I got slightly jealous, in a way, when you said about the 8-week program that you have. Now, we don't have that in Tokyo. It's just this continuous learning experience. You come to a workshop and you never leave unless you leave Tokyo. So we don't have... It's a cult.
Well, of course it is. It's a cult here, too, but...
We don't have this wonderful thing of like joining with a group of people and being with them for 8 weeks and having that out of your comfort zone experience, being really intense for those 8 weeks. It's a beginning and an end. With us, there's no end. So some people don't come on week 4, week 24, etc. So the people that are performing in Tokyo now haven't had that intense experience together. We just practice with each other every week. The bond is completely different. So we have to work at our bonds after we've joined the groups, if that makes sense. Yeah. So you guys are pretty lucky. And I think maybe that shows when we have visitors come over, that they have that kind of that background. And obviously the guys that we've had from Austin were really lovely.
Yeah, I'm telling you, nice people. And like I was talking about earlier, the crowd that does international traveling for improv, pretty much the sweetest. Whenever I see the people posting stuff on their Facebook about, hey, we just went to this place, I'm like, oh, so good, because they are lovely, wonderful people, and people will go, oh, wow, Austin people are great. I'm like, good. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, good answer.
Yeah. The people that I don't like, I just convince them they need to move to LA, and then, that takes care of that.
Yeah. The other day, they said, have you ever considered going to LA to live for a year and just sort of do improv and theatre? Because as I said earlier, I'm just a massive fan of Dan and Edie and the work they do there.
Sure.
And I was like, no, I've never ever considered that. I think LA would just ruin me because I'm just a sweet little English girl.
Then I spoke with Matthias Avaca about his globe-trotting adventures for improv.
Because I started this trip in June
after spending some time in San Francisco and then in Europe, I went to Russia for the World Cup, the soccer World Cup. And after that, I went to Italy and Spain. It was around July. And I was asking around, okay, what's on? And people were saying, no, there's nothing on. I mean, so it's over. It's summer break. So you have to come back August, September. And I was like, but I'm here. I'm already here, you know? And I decided to keep traveling and come back later. So I went to Japan for a month, and that's where I met Christian for the first time. I actually met Christian and Mike in Tokyo, and they invited me to perform with the Pirates of Tokyo Bay group.
Oh, how was that?
That was really fun. I was one of the guests for the show, and I remember we played some games in Japanese and English, and they also asked me to do some Spanish, and it was really fun. It's a big group, a lot of people, very talented people, and they only perform once a month, I think. But it's quite fun.
Wow. Yeah, that must have been a wild experience with the Japanese audience and half in Japanese. What a wild trip.
Yes, I really like how they do their show. One of the forms that I have with my troupe, it's based on the fact that you have different languages. So it's like a bilingual or multilingual if you have more than two languages. And it's the one that we perform in festivals in New Zealand and Australia. So for me, the languages difference and opportunities are really important. And the way they do it is quite interesting because it's kind of like they do one game in Japanese and then one game in English and kind of like that. They go switching. But the way we do our show, it's called Living La Impro Loca. The way we do it, it's combined languages and just a big mess of things. And it's like a melting pot. I like to call it that way.
In this clip, I talked to Edie Wittelar, an Indonesian improviser who runs Impro Noof International, Oslo, Norway's first English-speaking improv comedy theater.
I don't know what got into me. They said, "Do you want to try a workshop?" I guess I was enjoying their shows a lot, and I figured, why not, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Prepare yourself. Read some books first before I hit my first workshop, obviously.
You did?
So I dig up Truth and Comedy. It's like, okay, this guy's inviting me to do improv workshop. I better know what I'm doing.
Oh my
goodness. And then I read the Truth and Comedy and Harold, and then comes in, and I'm so ready for Zip Zap and Zop.
What a great way to prepare. I love it.
I guess if you ask like how does academia bleed into my world of improv, is how I approach improv, like how I would study for it, do literature studies, do video literature on YouTube, intensely before hitting any workshop.
Huh. Do you still do that now? Like before you take a workshop, do you like really research the person that's going to teach you that workshop so that you know a little bit about what they might be talking about?
Oh yeah, I researched you already. Before I went into this interview, I've listened to at least 3 of your podcasts to understand what the beat is like. Are they gonna ask more about improv or more about life? Prepare myself to have personal questions, maybe. So I did a lot of research before jumping into anything.
That's so great. That's so great. How well prepared you must feel. Or do you feel prepared at all, even though you do it?
I can understand. So when you say, okay, this workshop is going to be like this, I would need 2 photos of you doing your headshot, etc. And I already know, okay, yeah, I've seen other profiles on your podcast, so I understand where you're going for.
Good. I feel good about that. I feel better about being consistent. It's certainly ebbed and flowed over the time, for sure. I wonder, did you listen to more recent episodes or ones from long ago?
Yeah, so the last one I listened was from Matthias Abaca about multilingual improv, which was something is actually I'm picking up very recently. It's very interesting.
Oh yeah, because the improv theater that you run is all in English, right?
It's all in English except for this one show, which has become like one of my little passion projects. So we are doing a show in fake Dutch. Because I live in the Netherlands, I do speak Dutch. I recruited a couple Dutch people for the team, and then I recruited 3 other people who doesn't speak Dutch. And then we don't tell the audience anything beforehand. We just go into the show playing a show, an entire set in Dutch. And some people actually speak real Dutch. Some people speak gibberish. In the end, the audience, some of the audience are not quite sure which one's fake, which one's real. And the fact is there's like different languages going on is actually a rich experience. So that's why I like that podcast episode you had.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I feel like that's definitely something that people are interested in, you know, the melding of various languages put together so that, you know, the audience can experience not only, like, if the person in the audience speaks both languages, they can be in on a level of the joke that people who in the audience don't speak Dutch don't get, but yet they still get an experience. And I wonder at the end, it would be so interesting to find out individually from the audience members if they have the same idea of what happened or different ideas. You know?
Oh, it's so funny because they've had different ideas. So some people were enjoying it. It's like, what the hell are you doing, man? Why are you? It's like a candid camera for the audience kind of thing. But they were. But for them, it was entertained. And then there's also some other audience who actually asked for a refund because they say, I thought you promised an English show and this was in Dutch. And we were just laughing because like, we did make the refunds and apologies, etc. But it's like, they actually bought into our Dutch show, our fake Dutch show.
Wow. That's so interesting. What a reaction. I didn't mean it to be, but the podcast is largely focused on improv. Listen in as Leela founder Jill Eichmann talks to me about learning the SARC method and how that led her to improv as a calling.
I was reading a book called Free Play. Have you read this book by Steven Nachmanovich?
No.
And it's kind of like a theoretical dissection. I think he's a professor or something. Theoretical dissection of improvisation in like lots of artistic mediums. And the very, like music, dance, you know, poetry, everything, right? In the very first paragraph of the book, he talks about Leela and this word that means play in Sanskrit, but it's divine, right? It's like spiritual connection. It's, you know, it's like, that's what improv is for me, you know? And when I was figuring out what to call our company, I was like, I really want it to be a woman's name because I dealt with a lot of like sexism growing up in improv in the 90s. And so like, I just was like, I really want to bring a feminine energy to this art form. And I'm in San Francisco. It's very feminine energy. It's like, I really want a word that encapsulates what improv means to me. And I was like, Leela is a woman's name, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so we just called it Leela. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So Stephen started with meditation and then got into improv. What did you start with to get before you got into improv? Or you just known about improv from the gate?
So I was a theater kid. I love theater. I also love team sports. So when I was like 8, 9, 10, I became a big, huge like TV couch potato. My parents were like really concerned about me because I would just like sit this close to the TV, you know, and like they're like, oh God, Jill, like she's just watching TV, like that's all she's doing, you know. So they got me involved in sports because I thought it was good for me, and then they got me involved in theater, you know, kind of simultaneously, and I liked them both, you know. And so I think for me that was kind of the hybrid, you know, like. When you're taking acting classes as a kid, it's all theater games. You know what I mean? So I really love the theater games part of it. And then I, did theater in high school. I did all the plays and all that kind of stuff. Got a theater degree in college. But when I was in college, I just stumbled upon this really amazing improv troupe that happened to be at my university. And this woman was a graduate student. The woman who was teaching the improv program was a graduate student. And she had this really great idea of like, we need to increase our membership. Let's just make it a club and a class, And so it like spread like wildfire. And I went to a really huge state school. I went to University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida. And so we had people who were like engineer majors, physics students, every major in this class.
That's
And
great.
it was so much fun, it wasn't just the theater geeks,
Yeah.
She was she was really into Sark. She was from Salem, Massachusetts.
Ooh.
She was a witch. Everybody.
Yay. Ooh, I love it. I love Salem.
She was a Reiki master.
Yes.
She was had this intense, fiery energy. I say had, she's still alive. I just have this vision of her in the past. Her name is Heather Roberts. She she got married, so it's Heather Roberts parody. But like, she was just this force, we were all just like, felt like you were going to like some improv guru, and she'd do these like preaching lectures before improv class about how improv is a lesson for life and how we need to change up our patterns and walk differently to our different paths to our class every day, just like all these beautiful lessons. She was really into Sark. So
What is-
Sark,
I'm not familiar with that.
she created those posters like How to Be an Artist. Did you ever see those posters that were really popular in the 90s? They were like all different like rainbow colors. It was like How to Be an Artist, like eat peaches messily or something, like sleep in, like do all these like creative things for it's kind of like a combination of self-care and artists.
But what is the word Sark?
The woman who created these books and posters, she went by Sark. S-A-R-K.
Oh, okay.
So Heather was really into Sark. Like, she read all her books and did all her journals, and like she would bring that into.
I thought it was maybe another undercover society.
No, maybe. But she actually is from the Bay Area. I think she lives like in a magic cottage in Berkeley or something. She calls it, and she got the magic.
Heather Roberts?
No, this woman Sark.
Oh, Sark.
Yeah, Sark. So we would all call like Heather had this like Sark method or something. She like hybridized Sark and improv and Reiki and
so fucking
Wiccan and like all this stuff. So she was just amazing. She influenced so many of us,
How great that a person working for University of Florida put so much effort into their job.
Student.
Like it's so
yeah.
All you need to do in the world, guys, is do your job.
Yeah.
That's it. If you do it, what they ask you to do,
right,
people's lives will change. Like the fact that she was like, what do I have to do? I have to teach them this. Let me teach them what I think is cool, and it's about
and
that.
it grew.
Like, yes.
There was a point where there was 150 people in that class.
Whoa.
Because she just would like open, like anybody could come. So we would like crowd into this upper lobby of the university, of the theater auditorium, this upper lobby area, and it would just be packed, and people would be sitting on the stairs and just like, it's crazy.
Oh my God.
It was huge. And we would like divide into different areas of the auditorium space to have class, and then there would be like senior students would like lead other groups. It just like became this thing,
For how many years did she do that? Because she's a grad student, right? So she's not like there forever.
Yeah, I came in. Well, maybe it was like her second or third year when I was a freshman. Yeah. And it was kind of an interesting kind of golden age too, because like all the seniors in the group were super passionate about improv. And there was this, Austin, Texas. So there was this festival that they really wanted to go to that they heard about in Austin, which was the Big Stinkin' Improv Festival. And the year before I came in as a freshman, they had all gone to this festival. And all these teachers from Chicago were there, like Del Close and Mick Napier and all this long form that they had no idea about. And then they came back and was like, we're moving to Chicago. Like a whole bunch of them were like, after we graduate, we're moving to Chicago. And a whole gaggle of them went, and a lot of them are now teaching, performing, doing amazing things in Chicago. So a lot of us who like kind of grew up around that time are doing this full time. So it's really cool. We all like keep in touch with each other. And her motto for improv was like, play from a place of love. She would like put signs up, like play from a place of love. Like, that's the most important thing. Like not going for comedy, like going for love, Yeah. So we all have this like base in like playing from heart and kindness, Yeah. Yeah. Which really influenced like my style of teaching too,
Yeah.
When I talked to Australian improviser Amanda Buckley, she spoke about how improv acting gave her the chance to play characters they never let her play in scripted theater.
I have often said that I think I was a token female at the time to get cast into things. There weren't a lot of female improvisers back then. And I was one that could stand in the middle of the stage and had theatre training so you could see my face. And most importantly, the big thing that comes back for Amanda Buckley is you could hear me. It didn't matter where you were in the room, you could hear me. That dramatic, loud child had found a home. But as a friend of mine said, I might have stood out as a female, which made people look at me. It's always handy to have a woman in the cast. But I got asked back because of my skills, not because I was a woman. So
you had a lot of skills. It's a lot of training you've just described. It's like, wow, I haven't done maybe like a third of that. Like, wow. As a singing coach and, oh my God, whew, that's a lot.
I was trying often back then as well to just add as many strings to the bow as I could because I was only getting auditions as the fat girl, really. Sure. And so I wanted to at least nail those because they're few and far between roles, and there's never more than one in a cast. Heaven forbid we have more than two people who are over the normal actor's average size, which we know you don't have to be very big to be considered the big girl in acting. And, at that age, I was just trying anything to be more skillful. And in Australia, a lot, maybe not so much now, but definitely back then, a lot of the improvisers were trained actors. So we had much more of a theatre background. And so there was a groundswell of people who were actually theatre people before they were improvisers. And that is, I took the classes originally to have some fun, but and add some skills, but to get better at auditioning. But what happened was I just found the place where I felt this is my home. And I think it was because for the first time there was any role was available to me. I could be anything. And so suddenly I felt like all of those skills that I had, I could actually use here because I wasn't just the token big girl. I wasn't just the best friend role. I wasn't just the evil character, the grotesque character. I could be any of those things. And that felt like coming home, for the first time that I could be. The first time I remember being in a scene with someone where, it was romantic. Even though I'd read all the romantic monologues, and even though in drama classes, you do a scene study and it might have been a romance, I would never be cast as a romantic character. So to actually be in a show where I'm in a romantic position with, the lead guy, just even for those short scenes, or it might only be, 2 minutes of just being that, I just was, my heart burst. I loved it. I was like, wow, you can be all the things?
Improv teacher from Los Angeles, Jay Suko, talks about what it was like to ride the wave of improv as it got more and more popular over his lifetime.
A lot of people, I think, that I came up with and trained with and performed with early on, we all had the same attitude, which is, this is a dead-end job, thank goodness. It's not going anywhere. We get to just play, but there's no pressure of doing anything. And so a strange thing happened along that way is that there became more opportunities. I started teaching. I started performing and getting like gift cards for holiday parties. And you're like, what? I'm getting a $20 gift card? Oh, yeah. Look at this. And then pretty soon that somebody said, hey, I have a, I'm a real estate agent and we're having this meeting and we talk about listening, and some of the skills I'm using in here really help out. Can you come teach us a couple of these exercises? And then it's like, okay. And then that turned into, hey, we're having, a sales conference. Can you come in between our speakers and do something? And so it just started becoming more acceptable. It's the corporate world and the business folks started seeing this and going, hey, these skills I'm learning here apply to what we do. And we're trying to always, be here now is a phrase that kept popping up, and it's in the corporate world. And it's like, well, that's, moment to moment and staying present. That's what we've been doing in improv for years. So we started going, how can we relate this to that world? And then we started facilitating improv workshops in that way. Classes started exploding in popularity. You started having more, there were business books about improv. And so businesses were always looking to improve their communication. And the next thing you know, it's like, wow, I turned this hobby, which started off as, into this is my career for almost 30 years. And it started very slowly. And now, there are people taking improv classes. There are some places where you can take a class at 4 years old. They offer improv classes all the way up to retired folks. So there's people are starting to see it and accept it. Though it's starting to sneak into the zeitgeist. It's starting to sneak into the vernacular. When you started seeing like SNL make fun of improv, you're like, we've made it. Like they've heard of it. They've started making fun of it. It used to be like people would say, what's improv? And I'd go, have you ever seen Saturday Night Live? It's kind of like that, but we make it up, and they didn't quite get it. Then Whose Line came along, and that changed the game, and people had a reference point. And then the next thing you know, it's like, wow, I'm doing corporate learning, and I'm teaching improv exercises and philosophies to help people become more effective communicators. I'm also doing, improv shows where I come in and it's either for a holiday party, or I might use improv games to create a show in front of a business where we address some of their issues using improv games or maybe writing sketches or something. So it's really gone from there's no need for this outside of these classrooms or maybe a second city stage. When I started, it was like, I think there were probably 10 jobs in improv that paid, and they were all on the second city stage. So if you were not one, and that was mostly sketch, it was very little improv on the second city stages. They used it to create material, but definitely it was not like you can make money doing improv. And then I got hired to work at Comedy Sports in Chicago. And I think my first show, I got $3, and I thought I made it. I was like, $3, man, awesome. And then these groups started popping up, and a group like, Mission Improbable, they started touring, and you could get paid a living wage just doing improv games, touring the country. So it went from this is good at Second City to create sketch to no, it could stand on its own as an art form to, oh, these exercises can help us become better as professionals. And so that's where we are now. Now we're at a point where it's like, oh, I can go into a business and I can teach them how to be more effective communicators. I can teach them how to give more dynamic presentations. I can teach them how to bring more empathy to their situation. So a lot of things have changed, and with that, improv has grown exponentially. And you have books on the market now using improv philosophies to help with business situations. So it's a completely different world than it was when I started. And honestly, if it was this way when I started, I probably wouldn't have gone into improv, because it's like, I don't know, there's too much of a chance of something happening. I didn't want that when I first started.
Just at the beginning of the pandemic, I spoke with Bala Viswanathan from Improv Comedy Bangalore about the new innovation of Zoomprov.
You said that when, before you guys went online, you were watching other shows.
Yeah.
What were there any things that you saw that were particularly inspiring? Were there any, a moment where you're like, yeah, this is really getting something that maybe we didn't get before?
So I know Bats in San Francisco were doing a lot of shows, and they were one of the earliest teams that I watched. I remember waking up at like 7 a.m. to watch their shows because they'd be the whole time difference between San Francisco and India. So I watched a bunch of that. And then with time, I also started watching other sort of spontaneous theater. There's another spontaneous theater form called playback theater, where people share their real life stories and then the performers play it back. They do it through like metaphors and imagery and all of that cool stuff. I started watching a lot of playback theater as well online. And just in general, being in the improv community, my Facebook timeline was just flooded with people posting resources, people putting their own shows online. Once I started watching that, I started realizing Zoom is actually quite versatile. It can do a bunch of things. You still can chat with the audience and have them interact with you through the chat and all of that. Virtual backgrounds were a big thing. That was also fun to watch. Yeah. Watching those shows I was able to like glean what formats work well. Of course, physicality is not a thing that you can do. You can't do like physically intense scenes or things like that. You're just confined to a box. But even within that box, just watching people do so many different things was just really eye-opening.
Yeah. Sometimes the limitations really do help us to see further. I've spoken not just to improvisers, but to lots of other performers as well. Check out these clips about acting from Tracy B. Wilson and Nick Whitcomb.
So a lot of people joined Actors Equity by doing children's theater tours. And I really wanted to play Curious George. I had done a ton of physical comedy already. I had this character, it was like a whole thing. So I was like, I'm totally going to book this.
Yeah.
Now, when you audition, though, you go to this open call where you audition for the 15 shows they're doing. And you go and you sing a song, and then they call you back for whatever shows they think that you're right for. Well, Curious George doesn't sing, and I didn't want to be in any of the musicals because I'm not a singer. And so I was like, no, I just want to do this physical comedy role. So I show up to this open call. I walk in, and they say, great. What are you going to sing for us? And I say, oh, I'm not. Now, this is like one of those like long tables with all the people behind it. You know, it's like they've all got all the materials in front of them. And I was so like brazen, but in a good way, you know. And I just said, oh, I'm not. I'm here to play Curious George. And they were like, okay. And so I had made this like physical comedy piece where I brought a book of Curious George and I like did somersaults and like read the book with my feet and I like made up this whole thing. And, awesome. You know, I booked it.
Yeah,
amazing.
You did.
It's super amazing. And so, okay, about the commercials. So prior to this, I had been auditioning from commercials quite a bit and always getting called back, but never booking them. And it would always be like, oh, went to the other girl, never booked them. And so this is like 6 months. Comedy group, all these auditions, and then I leave for the tour. And I come back from the tour, but here's the thing. While I was on tour, and this is again, like I didn't even own a cell phone. This is, you know, end of the 90s. So I watch commercials in the hotel room as if my life depends on it. Instead of switching from show to show, I switched from commercial to commercial. And my goal was to learn how to do this, what I call the tampon tone of voice, right? So, because when I moved to New York, I'm like loud and big and did shows and all this crazy stuff. And I go to my first commercial audition and it was for some like Bath and Body Wash something. And I'm sitting in the lobby and I'm like, oh my God, I've seen all of these people on television already. Oh, whoa. I was so nervous. And I felt this like tiny little thing from Buffalo, you know? And I go into the room and I had like read my How to Act in Commercials book, you know, like I knew I had my script underlined and circled and highlighted and, you know, and so I go in and I was over the top gigantic, like terrible. And so I had a good commercial agent and the casting director who did not have to do this. And the more I've learned, the more I'm like, wow, this is remarkable what she did. She like stops the tape and she just like, you could see she's like almost laughing. She puts her hands up to her mouth and she goes, okay, so you just moved here and you do a lot of theater. And I said, yeah. And she said, listen, I know you've come from a good place. They obviously trust you and what you do. I said, I'm going to show you what you just did. I was like, okay. So she shows me the tape. She plays it back, and it was mortifying. I mean, I was like acting like I was on top of the Empire State Building. I don't know what I was doing. I was crazy pants. And so she's like, you're funny, you're cute, you're smart, whatever. Just do the thing. But like, I couldn't get it. So all these commercials, I'm getting close, but I just still haven't quite cracked the code. So I'm on tour with Curious George, and I'm watching commercials over and over. And as they would talk, I would like repeat back what they said until I felt in my voice, what is that tone of voice? Until I felt it in my throat, in my body, how are they talking? Because they're not projecting, you know? And I hadn't done film and television before. Not really. I'd done some like local commercials, but no dialogue and, you know, whatever. And I hadn't cracked the code of like talking naturally on film and television. And so I come back. I feel like I've learned the tampon tone of voice. I call my agent. I say I'm back from tour. They send me on a tampon commercial audition. Well, clearly this is a sign. Now, Amy, I tell this story a lot, especially to younger actors that are like, teach me things, right? Which I totally respect and admire. You had to sit down at the audition and read the copy. Well, instead of sitting facing forward and just sitting in the chair, imagine I turn sideways and I put my feet up on the chair, so I'm hugging my knees and I have like my chin on my hands, because at the time, that is what every tampon commercial looked like. Like, look at me sitting so comfortably on this like white couch while I'm wearing tampons. You know what I mean? Like, and so not only did I know the tone of voice, but I also knew what they looked like, and I booked it. I called my mom and I said, I'm the other girl. It's me. They picked me. And then once you book one, you just like the floodgates are open and you just booked a ton in a row.
And people always say like acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. Well, if that's the case, then I need you to build those imaginary circumstances and not harm yourself by digging into your own past. It's also just not healthy. And I think that that's something that, especially right now, actors need to be conscious of, is that oftentimes, I mean, there's no one really doing a mental check-in. The director oftentimes is like, oh, that emotional breakthrough is so amazing. But then they don't check in to be like, are you okay though? And so I think that actors lose agency. They think, I just have to keep doing that because that's my job. But if you're crying backstage before a scene every night because you think that's the best way that you can do that thing, then we need to talk about it. And we need to figure out a safe way, because that's not healthy. Like, even if you're doing this for a role, like you said, we do it every night a week. So if you're crying for every rehearsal, that's every day for 6 nights a week. And then in performance, if you're doing like 5 shows a week, that's 5 times a week you're crying every night. And then you have to go home and wake up and probably do your job, and unless this is your job, in which case you might be crying in the morning and then crying. That's a lot of tears. Like, that cannot be healthy. So there just has to be another way to get there, and to rehearse and to understand the stakes and to get into the words and live in the world and stop thinking about what am I, the actor. I say this to my friend all the time. She was like, I went to this audition and I gave the best audition ever, because they asked me if I could sing a song, and I wasn't prepared to sing a song. I just did a quick warm up and I did it, and it was going to be what it was. And I was like, we should all just it's going to be what it is. You just have to live. You have to know the circumstances, know your lines, know your songs, know your movement, know your whatever, and just go live in that world for 2 hours. It should not be, what does my face look like? What is my line? Did I hit that beat? Is the audience getting this emotion? If you just live in that life, they'll feel the emotion because you'll take them with you.
Throughout all of my interviews, I've learned so much from my guests' adventures, including this snippet from my interview with life coach Kelly Hopkins about how she uses art therapy to help her students connect to their authentic selves.
And what I have found is that many women throughout the course of their lives get
disconnected from their inner wisdom, from their authentic self. And there's just a lot of crap that has happened to them, that has buried that piece of them. And then a lot of really negative messages, going back to my junior high school experience, but from parents, from the media, from teachers and other authority figures, just really negative messages that have them shutting down parts of themselves. And when you shut down parts of who you are, you do get disconnected from that authentic self, because your authentic self needs to be all of who you are. It can't leave out big chunks. And so you end up with just this this tiny thread between you and who you really are. And so that's really been my joy in work, is to support particularly women, but I also do work with men and teenagers, but particularly with women, to help them to reconnect with that inner wisdom, to reconnect with their authentic self by processing things through these art exercises. I've got about 75 different exercises that access different either emotions or aspects of life. And I'll also, when I'm working with someone individually, I'll make, and it's weird because I wasn't a spiritual person at all. And then I, went through a kind of spiritual awakening at the same time that I was doing this process, but I still don't consider myself super spiritual. But when I'm doing the visualization, I don't ever prepare anything, and I don't think at all. And it's it just comes and it just comes out. And so when I'm with an individual client, I'll frequently prepare, I'll turn on we work on Zoom, and I'll turn on the recording, and I'll just record whatever comes out, and then I'll send it to them in a video so that they can do it. 'Cause sometimes it takes more than one time going through that experience and drawing and different drawings coming out in order to really fully let it go. And so I'll record it for them, just a completely unique experience, unique visualization that's just for them, just about their particular situation. And they'll draw it, and then they'll do it multiple times to really kind of fully flush out whatever that thing that was hindering them was.
I'll never refuse another opportunity to talk about my 18-year theory once again. Thanks to Gael Dornaweed-Perry for being one of my many guests who discussed it with me.
Cedric had a team that was not going well. So a lot of people left, and they were too little to stay as a group. And so I joined that team. And what happened is that 2 weeks later, I was on stage with them because they didn't have enough players.
2 weeks later, that's so fast.
It was ridiculous. It was and so what happened is that 2 weeks later I was in the first show, and then I took 2 classes a week instead of 1 because there was 1 spot left in that advanced class that I was. Then they were like, "You want to take that advanced class?" I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'm going to take that advanced class." And I was not really realizing what happened there. But I think in 3 months I had done 4 matches, 1 long form, and took 2 classes a week, which was a super intense beginning. And that was really nice.
Wow. That is so much. From nothing to all that is so much. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm like that. As a person, I will be like, I don't have anything on my calendar. Let me just pack it with everything every minute. I mean, that's definitely the way how you
but
do it.
I think I got very lucky to find that, because in France, there is not really improv schools or stuff like that. I mean, more and more now, but it's companies that are building a school around the small core of the company, but there is no institutions. And La Lolita is one of these associations that are so big and so experienced in the scene that it is almost an institution. So when I joined that, it was suddenly I was discovering 200 people, and I was discovering easily 2 shows a week happening, often 1 free and 1 in the main venue, and plenty perspectives and people that were running this big machine there is once every 4 weeks, once every 4 years, there is the International French-Speaking Mondial. So it's like an international competition that is organized in Swiss, in Belgium, in Quebec, and in France, and it rotates. And for France, it's that association that runs it, which means that very quickly I was part of the artistic committee of that thing. And it's like the first edition I organized in Strasbourg, or I co-organized in Strasbourg, we had super big shows. And the final show was like 1,000 seats in the audience. And it's just like a very, very big machine. And that was falling into that big community made me dive hard into improv, and diving hard is the best way to hook me somewhere.
Yeah.
In whatever.
Well, I mean, the fact that it happened to you at 18, I think is a good spot, because as my audience will know, strap in, guys, I'm going to say it. I have a theory of life that every 18 years, you're a new person, right? So you were just at the beginning of adult you. And so that new chance, that new possibility, you were like ripe for it. I mean, it was absolutely the right moment. If like 2 years later, you had been doing anything else and somebody asked you, it's entirely possible you'd have been like, yeah, it's fine. No, thanks. I'm good. I'm working at the geology store, you know, like you do.
It's been a wild journey for the past 299 episodes, and I hope you can go back and check them out now with a more informed view of what was going on. You'll understand who the other voices are and why it's so dang loud all the time. And you'll meet artists from all over the world who are out there making art and trying their best, and I think that's pretty great. It's been a long time, and I'm happy for what this podcast has put out in the world. Thanks for sticking with me all this time. And here, at the end of the episode, I will leave you with the immortal words of Rachel Mason.
Putting art where there was none before is magic. And right now, frankly, it's an active revolution.
Thank you for listening to Yes But Why Podcast. Check out all of our episodes on yesbutwhypodcast.com, or check out all the content on our network, HC Universal, at hcuniversalnetwork.com.